This one is live, isn't it?
Okay, where is that pointing to?
The whole thing. You wanna do the specific? Yep. The whole thing.
Okay, folks, welcome back. Oh, my mic is on. So, Mary, you wanna just change the batteries to the mic? Okay, folks, welcome back. Any questions before we begin? Okay, we have a number of things we want to cover today. Is one of the things I want to do is I want to give you another quiz online, chapter 8. So I'm going to go to edit options. I'm going to open the test. I'll make the link available and I'll give 2 times and I'll submit. So can you be so kind to check to see if you have quiz 8 available to you? Yes, no, maybe
Check
so?
right
Okay.
That's for Monday, correct?
Yeah, for Monday, a week from Monday, okay? What else do I need to do? Let me just do this. We're gonna have a guest speaker today, Dr. Stephen Gerst, who's a MD, MBA, who has a number of past years invested in a lot of healthcare companies, and backed by popular demand, I've asked for the security, Chief Information Security Officer, to send back her crew to give a more of extensive, thank you so much, to give a more of extensive presentation on what they're doing with the do's and don'ts of security. Is that okay with you guys? I thought they were pretty good, right? So they were good. So hopefully we'll see what Dr. Gerst, he should be here. We'll see if he's going to be available. So Candace, can you do me a favor? I think it would be but around 4 o'clock. Check. All right. So
Chapter
let-
8 is available.
Huh?
The quiz 8 is available.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so let me just make this a little bit lower here. On the wireless. Okay. Let's see here, the podium over here. Should be okay. we'll get feedback. Let me go back to our bill content. Blackboard, I'll go to the audit area, which is the first. Go to course documents. And if I go to group 1, Sabrina, Jillian, Eliza, and JP, if I'm going to group 1, what do I?
We're about to publish something right now. Can you come back?
Okay, I'll come back to you. Okay. Group 2,
Yeah, click on us.
I'll click on you.
Then go
Okay.
to app website.
Okay, the only thing here, this is the app website,
Yeah,
okay, using the Wix.
yeah.
The one thing I would do, you may wanna change it, you see how it says My Site One?
Yeah, we just didn't know, we don't know what our app's name is yet, so we love.
Okay, so I would at least do it on the topic, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Lower it, I would,
Okay, I could change it to PTA.
yeah, change it to, you know what we're doing, hold on, let me just see if we can get it to it. Did you check to see if it works?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just see. It says USA Dancer?
Yeah, because you have to, I can edit the hyperlink, but you have to use the.
Yeah, right, but I'm saying instead of USA Dancer,
Yeah,
right?
but that's her, like the email address we had to use to make it, so it doesn't let you change. that.
Yeah, okay, so when,
Unless
okay,
somebody
the
would
power of
use
physical
Can we copy
therapy, okay,
About,
about us. Track of, you know, in terms of about us, I would actually put your folks' picture.
We're gonna do that like the creators. We're
Okay,
still gonna
fine.
add that.
Okay, great.
But we wanted the about us to be
Yeah,
about the website.
services, okay, for providers, for patients, does these all work or no? These are not links, right?
no, they're not links. They're
Okay,
just,
so you haven't done that, user testimonials,
we put like little
contact
things,
us, okay.
and then we're gonna add like,
And then you want,
creators.
right, and you wanna do, let's do, you know, a Facebook, and you can even do, Twitter to account, okay. So we gotta start,
yeah,
right?
it's very basic, but we have some,
We starting,
yes.
you know what I'm saying? And this is the beauty, rather than saying, hey, it's due at this date, we can give each other feedback as we go along, rather than waiting, that's, I think, the beauty of it. And there's something, let me just put in here a date. So today is Monday, the end of October, can you believe it? October 30th, 2017. So we're gonna be talking about health, IT, and apps. And there's something called Agile development. What does that mean? When you're developing systems, one of the things that in the past has gone wrong is they've taken so long, by the time they finish the development of the project, guess what happens? The situation changes, personnel's change, so they have something called, and you can put this in your notes here, it's called agile development. It's a way in which you work systematically, week by week, with the end users, with the developers, with the programmers, with the insiders, to develop your program and get feedback. Doesn't that make sense? Rather than saying, you're gonna give a job, let's say, now we're gonna say, hey, I know what I want, I'll give it to my team, come back in 6 months, and guess what? It's not what you wanted. Or the team has changed, or my requirements have changed, or the field has changed. So what Agile Development says is you're going to meet with your team frequently, the developers, the owners, the end users, and get feedback from them as you go along, and it makes much more sense because many times these systems fail because there hasn't been a match between what the users want versus what the people in administration want versus what the developers think. So in that case, with this group, what I'm telling you is we got a beginning of it, and now we'll continue each week. And what you'll show me is here, this is what we started. I want to get feedback from each other. Okay, so we got to start here, and everybody understand here when you say USA Dancer, you may even want to start with someone else, and then we can do it. Then we can even later on get a full domain name and then point it to that Wix site. But we got to start, which is good. Okay, excellent for our start. And this way you get feedback, and since I'm in everybody's group, I can give feedback along the way. Okay, what's next? So I'm going to go to course documents, and now I'm going to go to group 3. And where am I going to go? To the end?
Yep, and then you.
Our
click on-
website,
Yeah, you
okay.
can just click on that and it takes
Okay.
you, yep. So
So let me open up in a new window, we can see here.
This is the beginning of it, like, I hope.
Okay, this is not good.
Oh, it takes me and I think.
It takes you because you're logged in. So you have to be able to give me the URL. Everybody see what the issue is here?
Oh, okay,
You
okay.
can't give this to the public, right? You don't wanna give your email, you don't wanna give your password, you wanna make it to the public. So go back and get exactly, and you can even get help from other groups, okay? So this is what you wanna always do, is go with somebody else to check it out. We don't wanna have a situation where we need to have this. You always wanna check, not only yourself, Amir, but you wanna tell your fellow members, go ahead and check it out. You wanna even tell some of your friends, here's the link, check it out before you upload it.
Sure.
So that way you can make sure, because you're in the upload, so this is not correct. Okay, so we got 3, 4, Emily, Candace, and Kelly. Do I have something to look at?
No, not really.
Not really, not good. Okay. Group 5, what do I got?
We're working on it.
We're working on it. Meaning, do I have something to click or no?
Nope.
And why not?
Working on it.
Okay, all right. Hi, Dr. Durst, how are you?
Sarah?
Good to see you, as usual. Okay, let me just go to group 6. What do I have here? Madeline, Tommy, Charlotte, are we here? Good to go? Okay, so which one? Is it this one? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna open up in a new window. Okay. So what am I looking at? Not good either, right? Looks similar to,
Yeah,
okay,
it takes
it says
us-
error, okay? So we need to,
Fix
fix that. So, Carly,
Yeah,
you, will be our consultant for websites, your group,
okay.
and help the other groups get it, that you can actually have a clickable link, okay? Everybody know Carly's group, and you wanna, everybody raise their hand who's here from Carly's group, right? So we got here, we got at least half of them there to help afterwards to figure out what is the issue, okay?
So
I know, Sama, you're here too, okay, so we can help each other. Okay, that's one of the things, we shouldn't have this situation where we're putting it. Okay, so next time on Wednesday, yes, and do I need to see something?
We're posting, we figured out we needed one, so we're gonna post it this time.
Okay, so post it in a second.
It should be there.
And Sabrina, you're there too, did you check it out?
Sabrina, JP,
JP, and where am I going?
Go to group 1 all the way down. The link.
Food coma?
Yes.
yeah.
I feel like I'm in a food coma after the weekend. Okay.
Just look at the homepage. Do not click anywhere else.
I'm a coma. Okay, we gotta start though. Okay, see this here, I guess was this SRB for Sabrina, or what was SRB for?
That's my Gmail.
Okay, so instead, later on, we can do one, even if you can even do another one, so make it like food
If we
coma.
wanna do that, we have to buy the link, so you wanna.
You can't even put,
No.
You can edit the hyperlink if you want us to put that like in our paper, you can change what the link says, but you can't actually change the physical.
but how do they get the CRB?
Cause that's her email. It's her
I
email
feel
that
like
you make
we
the
sign
account
up
with.
with one, like
Huh?
we did it as a group, but we signed up with one email.
And they take that email, you
To get
can't
the
even
free
give her,
version.
you can't even get a subdomain now.
No.
No.
Why did somebody else get USA Dancer or something?
That's her
We
email.
used like a spam email.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, so maybe make a spam email.
But then we have to redo the whole.
Okay, I'm just telling you, all right, so it's up to you.
This is a photo. Ideally, it would be of our app,
Mhm.
but we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, so we can do it, so I'll expect to see more,
Yeah.
Well,
next-
yes, hopefully.
right, okay, for next time. Okay,
And if you scroll down,
and I can scroll down.
You scroll down here, just don't
Oh.
click the other stuff. So what we do, we are.
Oh, this looks nice, when you said don't touch anything.
No,
No,
you're
no,
just.
no,
I thought I was just gonna look at this,
Click the
okay.
other pages, but this page is fine, you can
Yeah.
scroll.
Okay,
it's kinda like a basic brief, that's our logo.
okay, no, that's really nice, where'd you get logo? This looks nice. Right, on, food camera, coma, yeah, macro, micro, right. Check out nearby restaurant, food coma has helped me develop good. reservations, oh, so this is gonna be on the reservation, okay, join our mailing list. And then we're gonna fill out the rest of the things.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
click those.
No, I won't click them. I know I'm gonna ruin it, right?
But yeah, so we have.
I'll break it.
We're eventually gonna have a slide that talks about our vision and then healthy features, so the portion control thing
Yeah.
and then
Like
like the
frequently
tracking.
Okay.
And then we're gonna eventually have recipes and tips, so have like people
Right, it's
putting
starting,
things.
you know, you
in.
can have like a little video, you know,
Oh, maybe.
you can do, and you guys can even start doing little video clips that you can put up there,
Yeah.
and then you can
We were gonna
do
make
along with it.
the main
Oh.
focus is like the app, but then this is like
Yeah, it
secondary.
looks great,
Thank you.
right, don't you? Everybody really, it's really, it looks like you know, and then if you went, right, and you said view source code, look how much they wrote there. See, this is all the HTML code they wrote.
What that we wrote?
This is all, you remember we talked about HTML? This is all the hypertext and the JavaScript that
We
was
barely
behind
do
it.
anything though.
I'm just, I'm just, okay, but I'm just saying, so that's kinda like in the back end that you can see it. Okay, great. So we got a sense here. What, is there any other one that I need to see that you've corrected? Yes, no? So for Wednesday then, all groups that I did not see, I'll see on Wednesday, correct? You got it
It's
working?
Yeah, you gotta work.
You got it working, so I can go back to,
I have a
safe.
question.
yeah,
The pictures that we're using from online, obviously we don't own those pictures. So this is like.
well, you should go look at areas, you can do images where you can see public domain images. I'll show you on Wednesday where you can find those, but you should search for public domain, there's a lot of images that are on the public domain that you can use freely. But we'll start with this, okay, is this where I need to do?
Yeah.
Open a new window. Okay, welcome to Lean on Me, okay, advancing your life, okay. Monitor and ensure required safety standards are being maintained through your employees. In addition, personalized identification. Lean on Me offers space to identify facial. Okay, so what are we showing here?
Bottom stuff's just the format, we still gotta fill that out.
Okay, so. Lean on Me, advancing your life. Are these done or no?
No, they're not.
Okay. Well, our first stage is a preventable. So Android, what is Android here for?
Is this the apps you can get it on, so like when it will, if it was a real app, it would lead to the download link.
Okay, automatic upload and Android easy browsing. I've seen other apps that serve similar purpose when I entered the answer, okay, how often? All right, so we'll get some more for Wednesday, some more places. Any others I need to see that are working now? So Amir, did you get yours to work or no?
Not yet, because it works for me, but.
Okay, so you gotta get other people in your group to try to get it to work. Okay, and then when we finish later, we can do that. Okay, Dr. Gertz, how do you want to proceed here?
Do you have a flash drive I can put this on?
Yeah.
No, I mean, some format.
Okay.
Let me see if I can extra. So, let me see, I should have an extra. Someone have an extra flash drive? I do. You do? You wanna lend it to Dr. Gerst?
Because I have one, but it's
Okay.
apparently
Thank you.
not gonna work.
Alright, so here, sign in, come in and sign on. You want me to publish it? You want me to publish it? You think that's that thing? Yeah, publish it. Okay, so let me just.
Okay, is there a website I need to go to, Dr. Gerst?
Here,
Nope.
one in the big stuff.
We're good.
You're good? Great.
All in the slides.
Publish and see if that works. And then put that publish link up into it.
It just doesn't have anything else on. Huh, you're pulling up my website.
What?
Pulling up my website.
Yeah, Stephen R. Gers.
Huh.
MD, MBA, MPH, and CHE.
What's CHE?
What's CHE?
There's a thing, if you're a hospital administrator, fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives, and I'm a diplomat, so it's part of that.
Okay,
This is taking a long time.
okay.
Sorry about that.
So,
Unless you can hook me up.
no, we can, just wait.
You have an
Are you
estimate?
copying it?
I'm trying, but it's taking a
What,
long time.
what is it?
Unless you have an S connection.
Yeah.
You have an S connection?
Yeah. What's happening? Is it working?
It is published. It's now on our website.
Not responding.
Did you put the published thing in the
Not
link?
responding. Just say that. Let's just see here, we have this PC.
Trying to do it.
You should do it.
It's too big for me.
Yeah, it's published. Yeah.
Yes, I think you have it.
It looks like the same link. I changed it. Doesn't work. Here, log into here.
Unless you have an S
No.
connection or do you have one of those other ones?
Yeah, I have one of that.
I can use that. See, it's taking forever. Oh, you have one of those?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have this. Do you have one too?
Let me see.
Unless you get out, you can save it to you or upload it. Got it?
Well, it looks like it's on.
It looks like it's on. Let's try.
Try it.
Try it.
Says directory name is invalid.
Try it. See if it
Otherwise I'll pull it up.
yeah.
Is this it? Yeah, yeah, that's it. I think since we just created answer some specific questions, we can hit it. You only, your name in here, but no one's.
Let me just see.
I don't, there's no, my name is not included. Just look at my contact information. Just to show that you did something, but there's no name still in the file.
No, you can take it, we can erase it. Just saying that we just try.
And there are edits, so you can basically have your impressions.
Well,
Okay.
it's gonna come up, so.
Perfect.
We go to slideshow.
Yeah, from the beginning. Okay, do you want to introduce your, folks?
You can.
Folks, we are honored to have come back, Dr. Stephen Gers, who's MD, MBA, you can see. He now is even, this is new to me, telemetrics. You're the
Yeah.
chief medical officer since the last time.
Brett and I formed that.
Right, and Dr. Gerst and I have worked quite a number of years together. He's really been, I think, especially for South Florida, a major force in bringing companies to market, getting them with mergers and acquisitions. Every time we're lucky to have him here, because usually he's on the road, either at a conference or dealing and wheeling in New York City or other places. So he's worked with a number of hospitals before. He's been involved, and now he's been involved in new healthcare ideas. So, and I really appreciate him having not only MD background, but also the MBA background, that's always looking at healthcare for the business aspects too. Just like I was telling you before, what about your funding? Because these students also are creating for themselves some health, projects here, and I always am gonna say, well, how are you gonna keep in business? They said, well, we'll get support or we'll get investors, but I said, how are those investors gonna get their money back, right? It's just not, charity of giving, money, sometimes in social impact, but other areas, so you can give us, feedback. So I'll let you take over in any ways I can be your slide, person or whatever you'd like.
Okay, how much time do we have?
We have about, let's say about a half hour, 30 minutes.
Okay. Let me just get a general show of hands of how many people wanna go into medicine here? Like med school or nursing?
And,
or-
and then, Bradley's a physician already, pediatrician.
Oh, you are, I'm sorry.
Okay. He looks so young.
He does,
Doesn't he?
and he's,
Right.
is this an undergraduate or graduate?
It's both, it's a combined,
It's combined.
a
I'm
combined
in,
graduate and under.
And the Masters of Science in Clinical Translational Investigation program at UM.
Oh, great. Well, that's excellent. Yeah, that's a good program. I teach in the health sciences, thanks to Sarah, and we're putting together a course for physicians for Jackson and UM program starting in January. Just physicians, teaching physicians clinical informatics. How many people want to go into IT? Clinical informatics, IT, okay.
And health
General-
sciences.
Health sciences,
And
general
health
business?
sector management, there's a number of people in health sector management. From the
All right.
business school, we have a major in health sector management.
All right, well, how do you define health sector management? Go ahead.
Good question.
The business, basically the business of healthcare,
All right.
managing healthcare.
Well, that's a great intro, because we're gonna go to our first slide here and say, how big is the business of healthcare? All right? This is in the trillions. This was in 2007, under the Clinton Commonwealth Fund. They did this research projecting that if we didn't do anything, we were gonna go to, in the healthcare system, we were gonna go to $4.4 trillion. Now, how big is the US economy? Anybody know? How big?
17.
Close, yeah, between 14, around 14 trillion right now, but going towards 17 trillion. China's now catching up, they're number 2, and growing, they'll probably outpace us. But healthcare is the biggest problem we have, why? Okay, there's a business class, right? What?
The costs.
The cost, exactly, you're very smart, what's your name?
Eliza.
Elisa, very good. When we talk about the cost, who pays that cost?
Everyone.
Some of it is government.
But where do you get that money from? It's out of pocket.
The people in the government.
The experience.
It's the employer, right? So what happens is, it's 18% of our gross domestic product right now, right? That's an operating cost to everything you produce. Every sweater, every IT piece, every computer, everything that we do, that's an operating cost that we're saddled with when we're trying to export goods and services. Against China and Malaysia, which are 3 and 8%. So we have a 10 to 15% tariff already built in to our production of goods and services because of our US healthcare system, okay? Now, how do we compare to other countries? Look, as soon as you hit Medicare age, now, I don't know why this is here, but that's age 65. As soon as you hit Medicare, the great social programs of 1965 under Johnson, which of course are extremely important, that differentiates our system.
Received from Andrew Sell.
That differentiates our system from everybody else's. We go from about $5,000 a person per year to $45,000 to $50,000 a person.
New messages received from Andrew Sell.
Sorry, it's my brother.
I didn't know it does that.
I gotta figure out how to turn it in. He's a lawyer in DC, so you gotta watch out. Draining the swamp, right? So anyway, this is critically important, okay? And this is because you have a third-party payer system that pays into the hospitals, right? So what happened was, it used to be hospitals came from where? Mostly churches, it was charity cases, and the trade-off was people used to leave their belongings and money and everything to the church. So if you go to New York, who's the third largest landholder in New York City? It's the church, because everybody left their property and everything, and as a sign of respect for the church. Columbia University happens to be number 2, and the city itself is number 1. But it started off, that's where the word hospital comes from, it's hospice, where the nuns and people would take care of dying folks because we didn't have antibiotics, we didn't have any of that stuff. All right, scoot up to 1965 when we get government payer for Medicare for the people over age 65, and boom, the MBAs get involved. First the MPHs, then the MBAs. Now, it's the biggest industry in the world by far. There's nothing even close. This is at $3 trillion. What's the next largest industry in the world? It's on the news every day. Well, technology plays a role in it, but it's, what?
Military?
Yes, national defense. That's $1 trillion. This year alone, Medicare surpassed the budget for U.S. national defense, just Medicare. Now, 60% of all healthcare is being delivered, whether through Medicare, Medicaid, Medigap policies, to the U.S. We talk about not going to a single-payer system, yet we're going there. We're heading that way. Okay, so that's what's happening, and the government has to figure out a way to cut this down, all right? Because politically, you can't cut Medicare, your history, right? So what do? You have to institute programs like accountable care organizations, incentivize the doctors to share the costs, change to value-based pricing instead of fee-for-service, and bundled payments instead of what we have right now, and push more to the HMOs that manage the care rather than the government, which doesn't do a very good job of managing the care. So that's what's going on. So the next slide. Right, these are what the ACOs are all about. Have you heard of accountable care? All right, yes.
Sorry, just a quick question. Between ACOs and HMOs, are they particular, do they both do the same, they serve the same purpose?
Same purpose, but
'Cause they're
completely
all-
different mechanisms.
Would it be
And
like
great
this-
question.
They're like a different network, one's a smaller network than the other?
No, it's a completely different financing mechanism, but you're on target. And I actually wrote the legislation, I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I wrote the first piece of legislation to create Medicare HMOs, and then I worked on the ACO type thing. So the Medicare HMOs are collective bargaining units, okay, for the employers that they serve. And they then contract with, they get a lot of buying power, they contract with doctors at discounted rates. For example, we built Vista Health Plan here, which is now Coventry, which is now Aetna, which soon will be CVS. Okay, that's how fast this goes in the last 15 years. All right, there's a lot of consolidation in the industry. We're paying doctors here because we have 13,000 doctors in a competitive market in 3 counties, 63% of Medicare. All right, Medicare's already 50% of charges. So you're paying 1/3 on the dollar because you have a lot of purchasing power. That's what the HMO does, but HMOs run about 3% margins, the same as grocery stores. You make the money on the float, on the premium float. So it's the investment of the premium dollar into the stock market and real estate and other things that is what really funds your HMOs and gives you a 3 to 6% margin. Otherwise, it's a very low margin business because it's just collective bargaining, and then you fight with the hospitals and you fight with everybody else, and that's how the HMO works. The ACO is completely different. In the ACO, the doctors form a group that they own, usually as a limited liability corporation, and then they go out and contract with the government directly, saying we think we'll share the savings that we can produce. Great example, I was dean of a program of a university out in California recently. My chancellor had nodules on his face. He went to his dermatologist, scheduled OR time, surgery time to take the nodules off. Cost was $50,000 to Medicare. A few months later, they came back. He brings them back. Doctor said, "Oh, let me just take care of that right here, right now." Boom. He said, "How much does that cost?" "Oh, nothing. I already got my $50,000 out of the government." Okay, that's the perverse incentives in our system, and that's typical every single day. I'm fighting with Holy Cross right now. I just filed an appeal because I had a kidney stone for the first time in my life in New York not too long ago. I went to Mount Sinai, St. Luke's, and where I'd done some training. I trained at Columbia in New York. Done some training in those hospitals. I had a kidney stone for a CAT scan, which cost $250. Mount Sinai charged my insurance company, Florida Blue, $3,200. 2 days later, apparently the stone wasn't gone. I came to Holy Cross here in Florida. Same everything. Same 4-hour stay in the emergency room. Same morphine, same works. $4,800 for the same test, which cost $250. I went to the CFO and I said, this is a problem. She agreed, this is a problem, I'll have billing take care of it. Billing called me and said, there's no problem here. We've called around the other hospitals. It's usual and customary. I said, it costs $250. You charged me $4,800. Don't worry, you're not paying, it's your insurance company. So I filed with the insurance company today, yes.
How do you know it costs $250?
Because I ran the HMO here, so I know what we negotiate them down to. And when you get into hospital accounting, for anybody who goes that route, it's the most complicated accounting out there. It's called step-down allocation. What it does is most of these hospitals are nonprofits, so they have to zero out profits, so that you're running a business to make $0 every year in a multi-billion-dollar environment, okay? How do you do that? So what you have to do is they say, okay, what are my revenue generating services, like the ER, the OR, labor and delivery, you know, and on down, the clinics. And you step down each of those categories, okay? And then you get to 0 point, and then down below, it's like, what are my costs? And nursing, fuel, you know, they don't pay taxes for the most part. And you step that back up, and then you anticipate your payer mix for the next year, and your discount value, and your volume, and your types of cases, and you try and come up with a charge master that then gets discounted back based on the discounts you're giving to the HMOs, the PPOs, and whoever else you get contracts with. And then you go in and negotiate with these folks as well. Very tricky stuff. I mean, we have banks of actuaries to do this, and this is what we do in the HMO business. The ACO is different, because what the ACO does is, if you get 5,000 patients together as a group, doctor group, applied to Medicare as an ACO, okay? Medicare then takes a look at your last 3 years of claims, does a regression analysis, some smoothing, and basically projects out what your rate of increase has been for the last 3 years and projects it forward and says, look, this is your projection, let's say it's 12% per year. If you can take 4% off that and just increase by 8%, now inflation's at 3%. In medical inflation is higher. If you'll just keep your costs down to an 8% increase, anything below that we'll share with you 50-50, okay? And that's the concept of the ACO. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see how these things have grown. They started in 2010. Most people claim it as part of the ACA or Obamacare, but it actually came in before that. And it is right on the line with Congressional Budget Office. Implications go to 72 million people. We're already at about 30 million in ACOs where doctors have signed up for this, okay? The only problem has been Medicare keeps changing the baseline once they squeeze it. So there's been problems in it, but that's the concept. And we'll have one third of the people in the country in ACOs by 2020, yes.
Because you said that ACOs are made up of by like groups of doctors.
Right.
How do you know that they're not doing, I guess, certain things for their best interest, for like their own?
Because now they're a group, and each one's monitoring the other, because each one and their practice patterns, because they all share in the savings. It's 50% below a certain baseline.
So they have incentives.
They have incentives, they make money. Now, most of these haven't really worked because the government changes the baseline, and then what's happened is, as these form, the hospitals buy them and control them, or the hospitals set up their own and compete with them. And then the insurance companies come along, and because you've now done the hard work by getting all these, it's like herding cats to get doctors together. Now you've done the hard work and you put it all together, the insurance companies come in and buy it. So United now owns 500 ACOs, and
Defeating the purpose.
Aetna owns 400 of them. Yes, your question.
Are ACOs the ones where you usually seek care in network and there's like a gatekeeper, or is that the?
That's the HMO. ACO, you can go anywhere you want.
Okay.
It's the doctor at risk. And the doctors want to get you with, you know, the lowest cost possible to get the outcomes. So it changes the incentives, because 20%, what happened was 20% of people, you know, we started this, the Medicare HMOs in 1996. Still only 23% of Medicare beneficiaries, and there's 20,000 new people turning Medicare eligible every day right now. It's one every 18 seconds, okay? Only 20% are involved in HMOs. So a guy named Elliot Fisher out of Dartmouth, whose father was Harvard Law, who wrote the book Getting to Yes, and Mark McClellan, who went to Harvard, Stanford, Harvard, was an MD, and then his government thing. and became head of the FDA and then head of CMS, that's Medicare. They combined and said, what do we do with the 80%? And they came up with this ACO concept. It's been refined a little bit, but basically it's the same concept. So, next slide. All right, so here's your breakdown. And I'm just gonna go through these quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But 31% of your dollar is in inpatient costs, close to 31 or 40, and 19% is in outpatient. But these are both hospital related, so that's almost 50%. 31% is physicians, then you got pharmacy and other. Just give you a basic breakdown. Where's the problem? The problem is that 86% of Medicare cost is in chronic care management. People with congestive heart failure, COPD from smoking, emphysema, et cetera, asthma, or chronic asthma with kids, and diabetes, is 86% of the dollars. How do you control that? So we all hear about the Fitbits of the world, right? That is what we call the worried well. All right, that is only 3% of the cost. The big pieces are inpatient costs right now, because it can run anywhere from $1,200 to $10,000 a day. And once you get those patients out of the hospital, to follow them, it's the chronic care. And those people that have chronic conditions that are expected to last 12 or more months are now being funded under new CPT-4 codes for chronic care management, and then if you're in the hospital for 30 day, to avoid 30-day readmissions for what they call transitional care management or discharge. So that's the focus of today's lecture. If you go next one. You wouldn't believe it. 35% of people in this country have 5 or more chronic conditions. Okay, 71% of every dollar in healthcare is spent on chronic condition management. That includes, that's not just Medicare. Medicare is 86%. 71% is everybody, all commercial, everything. That includes hypertension, heart disease, things like that that are not in the hospital. But go ahead. The goal of what we're trying to do, and Dr. Blatt, who is Sarah's friend, who was medical director at Intel, came up with this model. Okay, and Frost and Sullivan's picked it up. But this is called the leftward shift. This is the goal of what we're trying to do now. Acute care, ICU, et cetera, can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 a day in the hospital. We want to leverage technology that is available into step-down units. So you want to go into the nursing home or skilled nursing, and ultimately into the home and independent living. And independent living in New York and other places, they're actually the government's paying $5,000 per patient per month to allow them to live independently and monitor them. And that's a big market.
This is basically the trend, right in here.
Go right up there. That's what we're doing. So that's what I'm working on right now. The market for this, 140 million people for chronic care management. This is from Kaiser. Next. The amount of money you can make in this, $70 billion a year. So obviously we're going for that. So what I've done recently is we started off with ADT, okay, who bought a company out of Toronto that I've been working with called Ideal Life. We'll show you a few slides from them. That puts in the home FDA approved wireless blood pressure, EKG. We're working on lab in a box, weight scales for congestive heart failure, pulse ox, and glucometers, and all the equipment that you need to monitor people's vital signs at home. And we're moving now towards ICU at home and hospital at home. So I just met with a company, spin off of Alere, that started to do that. But I've teamed up with a company called Cognizant, okay? Anybody heard of Cognizant? Okay. Smallest company you've never heard of, right? They touch 190 million people. 40% of all financial transactions in this world run on their systems. They started off as Dun & Bradstreet Plan Services, which was their HMO out of Tampa. A couple of Indian guys came along, set it up in Teaneck, New Jersey, moved it to Teaneck, New Jersey, and then hired a bunch of Indian programmers. And they could throw bodies at it at $5 an hour when Accenture and PwC, where I came from, were charging $500 an hour. So they started in '94. They are now Fortune 205 with 270,000 employees, $15 billion in revenue, and $40 billion market cap and growing. Their healthcare division alone is now $5 billion. Didn't exist 10 years ago, all right? So I've been working with these guys because they touch every HMO in the country, ACO, IPA group, that's Independent Physician Associates, and then the TPAs, every large one runs on their systems because they bought a company called Trizetto, all right? And that touches 190 million people, so I've hooked up with them. Next. You can see who they, this is a little older slide, it says 390.
And when you say you hooked up with them, what does that mean?
We're doing a joint venture.
Okay.
I'm been hired by them to do consulting.
Okay.
Brett and I have both been hired as medical
Okay.
consultants and do integrations into the Epic system and the Cerner system.
Okay.
So you can see the size of them. So we're starting to work with them. They can throw bodies at this really quickly, but they're all highly skilled people. Next. Okay, so what are we doing? Hospital in the home. All right, this is remote patient monitoring. You're starting to hear that. We own a company, one of our companies that Brett and I own is called Remote Patient Monitoring, Inc. So we founded that when we saw this industry coming. What this does is this puts sensors in every room.
And Brett is from,
Epic.
of Epic.
How does this differ from the Internet of Things?
It's part of it. It's part of it,
So the
except it's
devices
cellular.
are Internet of
We're
Things
not-
within,
We're not really using the internet for this, but I do have a slide from AT&T on that for you, which is probably next, but go ahead. So this is where we put the devices. So you see wireless blood pressure, here's the hub, this is a cellular hub. So this is all Bluetooth that goes to a cellular hub that goes up via AT&T and Verizon. Verizon put 800 million into developing a venture group just to get into this, and then decided to pull out because they realized what they want to do is sell the packets of data. They don't want to be responsible for medical. All right, AT&T the same, I was just with them last week. So blood pressure, glucometers, weight scales, all the different devices. And we can connect anybody into this hub and then into the software. Distribute it in real time, straight to the doctor, to flow right into their Epic and Cerner EMR systems. And we've been selected as Cerner system for 925 hospitals and 27,000 locations. Epic, Dr. Schillingstad is the medical director there, so we've got about 100 hospitals teed up for that. And can go to the insurance company, and it can go to, I just got off the phone with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies this afternoon that wants to do clinical trials for pharmaceuticals in the home using these devices. So they're coming down here to Miami in 2 weeks to talk about it. Thanks. This is some of the equipment, but we can attach the Fitbits, we can attach all this stuff. The thing you have to be careful of is provider alert fatigue. Too much data. They can't legally be liable for all this data, especially if it's not FDA certified. So while we can connect it, we're hesitant to do that. That's on stuff. If it's not 510K and tested, we don't want to work with it, but we do sometimes if the client wants it. Walmart's a client, for example. Next. So this is what ADT originally got into this because they have 10 million homes, 150 million sensors in homes already. The number one security, life and safety, home and business, energy management, entertainment and lifestyle. If you already have all those sensors, why not just add a few more for health, right? So they wanted to be the biggest health company until Apollo came along last year, right in the middle of our contract, and bought them and decided they didn't want to be in the healthcare business, they just wanted to do a roll-up and an IPO. They did an LBO, IPO in 1 year. That's a different story, but next. But this was their design as to, you can have all the stuff, motion sensors, windows, doors, videos, and add this and create the smart home, which is the new term you're gonna hear. And it all goes into the clinical portals, and then you start taking that data and do database analytics, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, and that's what we're working on, is all those pieces. And feed into your cell phone, and Cognizant already has this, it's already connected to Alexa. Okay, so we've already got all of this ready to go, ever since, so that's happened since the last time we talked. Next. So here's your AT&T slide, okay? In 2014, there were 4 billion devices connected to the internet per second. In 2020, you're looking at a tenfold increase, 48 billion devices per second. That's your cell phone, your computers, everything you guys got in the room right now. So AT&T and Verizon, they sell the packets of data. And we're moving, with Qualcomm, we're moving from broadband to narrowband, 5G narrowband. Because for temperature, you just need 3 digits. You don't need broadband, you need a narrowband. For all these signals, you can get much more efficient on the batteries and on the equipment if you use a smaller bandwidth. And save time. Next. This is where the data files straight into the Cerner system, and you can see what we've done here. Connected patient home, scale through ADT. Any of the devices will be in there, and the doctors get the readings immediately. And the home healthcare nurses next. This is on the Epic system, similar. Next. Back to the Cerner system, what it shows you is all the vitals, how it feeds into the vital signs, and we set the alerts. Next. And what you're gonna start to see is kitting, what we call kitting. So by diagnosis, the nurses will be able, at the end of every day, push a button, and everybody who's being discharged from the hospital with congestive heart failure will get a kit sent directly to their house, pre-configured for them.
Who pays for that?
The hospital or the insurance company, in our model. In other people's models, like Welsh Allen and Phillips and some others, they want the patient to pay, which is unreasonable, which is why we got selected over everybody else, over
But,
these big
but in terms
multi-billion
of
dollar
cost, will
companies.
bring down costs.
Bring down the
But
cost.
wouldn't the patient pay in terms of their insurance, like would their insurance go up if their insurance covers
No.
it?
It
No.
should be the opposite,
Should
shouldn't
be
it?
the opposite, because you
Because of
keep,
cost.
as long as you keep people out of the hospital, keep them healthy.
It's that
And reducing
extension
the
of
cost.
giving them, it's basically
And-
the,
I'd say driver awards.
Exactly, but there's always a trick in all that stuff, you know, for the insurance company or whoever the payer is. What's the trick here? The trick here is that once you have that patient data flowing from their home into your hospital, your doctors, why would they go anywhere else? It's like unplugging your checking account. It's patient real estate, all right?
Let's say they have all their information, but there's another adult hospital that's closer. Isn't the EMS take them to the closest near them?
That's EMS. This is chronic care management.
So the chronic have to take them there?
No, you don't have to take them there, you wanna keep them out of there, because these hospitals, what's happening is that the insurance companies and Obamacare is failing, okay, for various reasons. The hospitals are picking up the Medicaid patients, and they're picking up the at-risk Medicare. So, they're getting paid a capitated fee, so in this case, as long as they're prepaid, they wanna keep the cost down, they wanna keep those patients, their own patients, out of their own hospital. If you go to Nemours, for example, you probably know Nemours pretty well. Children's Hospital up in Orlando. Okay, it's the largest children's system out there, it's DuPont. They built an entire hospital in Orlando, right south of the airport, with nothing but 100 PICU beds, or pediatric ICU beds. The rest is being done by telemedicine and our system. It's state of the art. It's Epic's flagship hospital. Every single patient is monitored like NASA, with paramedics and ER trained personnel downstairs with these big screens. Every single room is monitored, and now we're gonna start floating even the homes in. So all these patients will be monitored at home. So it's gonna be a hospital at home, yes.
So what's the incentive for, I guess if we switch to value-based care, it makes sense because there's no longer the fee for service.
Absolutely.
But
Macro,
for
MIPS, and APM.
physicians,
What?
What would the incentive be for them to check all these additional devices and these additional?
If they're an ACO,
Mhm.
they wanna keep the cost down.
Okay,
They're
so-
sharing the savings with the
they're sharing
government or
the
the payer.
savings.
So AC.
Patients are
AC.
healthier,
Okay.
their star ratings go up, their quality ratings go up.
Okay.
The hospitals will insist on it,
Okay.
okay? It's completely reversal of what we experienced.
Better healthcare, basically.
So
Better
then-
quality.
So then if your patient is at home and they're connected to these monitors, if something happens, is it the hospital that have the medical personnel in the rooms, they're the ones liable to help them? Or like, where's the liability come into play?
Yeah, we shift the liability to the hospital
Oh, so, okay, so it's 100%.
because the hospital's monitoring, doing the monitoring.
So it's
Okay.
not essentially the patient's doctor who is seeing them throughout the course of their.
Ultimately, it's your doctor. Your doctor always has ultimately responsibility. They're the ones supposed to be able to pick up the signal and determine, you know, because most of these patients are on 5 or 6 different meds that doctor prescribed. What's a normal blood pressure on 5 different meds when you have congestive heart failure in the first place? What's your normal blood pressure? Every patient's different. The doctor has to manage that care, but that's where it's going. So bundled payments, MACRA under value-based care, it's all going in that direction. So this is if you split out these kits a little bit more, you can see all the different equipment that we would provide going forward on the push of a button every single day. The next thing is you want to feed that data into the cell phone so people can manage their own health. And not only people, but your loved ones. So you have, I mentioned the fastest growing segment of the population is what?
Could be the baby boomers.
Baby boomers who are turning 65. What's the second fastest growing population? You will not know this, but I just heard it 2 days ago.
Millennials?
It's actually, you would think that, right? But we've actually hit a point where there's more people turning age 65 than under 5. Okay? The second biggest population growth is those over 100. Okay? And that's
The
where we're
growth.
going. The growth.
The
The
growth,
fastest.
not the
not-
number,
not
not
but
numbers, but they're going,
Two or
you never
percentage.
know.
Right. So now you want to be able to have that data feed into, like, a lot of people here, right, live in Florida, where their parents live in Florida, they live in New York, or they live somewhere else, right? It tends to be the oldest daughter who's the caretaker, we find out, okay, generally. However, there may be doctors in the family. You want to feed your mother or your father's stats in real time to those people, because when their blood pressure, when you start seeing your mom's blood pressure at 180 over 120, and she doesn't know what that means because she just got off the golf course up in Ocala, son might say, Mom, you're about to stroke out. You better get where have you taken your medicine? All right? You avoid a death, you avoid a big admission by having the kids monitor the parents. So you see it becomes a self-fulfilling system next.
I don't know, wouldn't that be very stressful? You're always worrying about your parents, I'm sure they're probably already worrying.
Well, they force it on the doc, they force it to go to get their blood pressure medicine. Or
But
take their
but
medicine.
it's like the flip side, that you really don't know what's happening, so at least this way you can have, it's almost like the thing of monitoring,
Right.
what's happening, monitoring in terms of they get care at home and you don't even know what's happening in their care that you wanna monitor. This way you can save costs where a number of people I know, they have to fly out to see their parents, right? They have to be there this way, at least they
Right.
know where the emergencies are happening,
Exactly.
they can.
A
they
lot
can
of times,
prevent-
the first warning you have that your parents are gonna have a stroke is they called from the doctor
Right,
called from the
right,
hospital,
right.
said your parent just had a stroke.
Right.
Come quickly, they don't have a lot of time. So we're designing this so you have a consumer portal that can follow you can track all your own behavior and go into the cell phone, and then the clinical portal that sets the alerts next. Plus telemedicine, okay? So telemedicine is coming along very fast. You'll see a lot about telemedicine. The difference is, and we're looking at working with a lot of telemedicine companies right now, and I'm advising some PE firms up in New York on who to buy and what to do. And, we're talking billion-dollar deals here. But I have an investment banking license too, just so you know. Series 7, 66, and 65, and we run a hedge fund. We run a $500 million offshore Cayman Islands fund to buy companies like this. So, like 12. But I'm still in school. I'm still teaching and I'm still in school. I've done a lot of different things, but this is where it's all going right here. So telemedicine is big. The interesting thing is now, you get like Teladoc, for those who followed that. They went public with 158 million about 2 years ago with 1,300 doctors in their system. They're now at the $2 billion market cap. You got 4 or 5 others that are gonna come to market to IPO. I happen to be doing valuations on those right now. But those are mostly colds and flus. And the other thing that's interesting is these telemedicine companies use their own doctors, right? But they're scattered all over the United States. What is the hospital doing? They're using those right now, but then they're building their own on the Epic and Cerner platforms because they want their doctors having a telemedicine visit to capture that revenue and to make sure that if it's a triage system, that those sickest patients get directed to their hospital. And that's why they're funding it. So this is where technology is going, being leveraged into the home. And you can see there's coaching, education, secure videos. We had a situation in Baltimore where we implemented the system for LifeBridge hospitals. It was about a 4-hospital system. And they started with congestive heart failure, and they were at 37.5% readmissions, and 2,600 hospitals got penalized for readmissions by Medicare last year. It's a whole new ball game. Just to digress for 1 second, when you go to if your carburetor's not working in your car and you take it to the repair shop, you pay for it, you get it back, and it's not working, what do?
You take it back.
And who pays for that?
The mechanic has to
Exactly.
eat it up.
But in our system, in our healthcare system, you cut off the wrong leg,
Right.
okay, you get paid for that, you come back to cut off the right leg, and you get paid for that too, okay? And the game was, for the last 30 years with DRGs, diagnostic related groups, the game is that it's based on an average length of stay. So let's say you've got a congestive heart failure case, average length of stay in the ICU is 5 days. right? If you can get that patient out in 4 days, you save $1,000 because you're turning beds. It's the hotel business. The hospital business is really the hotel business, just more expensive. And anyway, so you turn beds, right? So you make more money the more beds you turn because you're keeping that difference. But people were bouncing back within 30 days. So the government got wise to that and said, wait a second, we're going to penalize these people because they're gaming the system and they're not actually fixing the patient, right? We're not going to pay you. Not only are we not going to pay you, but we're going to penalize you, and it's going to hit your star ratings. So that's what started to happen. So half the hospitals in the country got penalized last year for readmission. So that is a big driver of doing this because, okay, so 3% of Medicare on a multi-billion-dollar system, doesn't seem like a lot, right? But when your board gets involved, and says, and we have a nursing shortage, how much of that money could have been used to pay for more nurses? You know, that's a big deal. Then this hospital CEO, his head's on the line. Okay, so that's what happens. So they're interested in doing this next. Another thing, just coming out now, is for compliance, be able to take your pills. Yeah.
In terms of the telemedicine, I know like my hospital, my insurance has a large telemedicine, but it hasn't really gotten off the ground much. A lot of it's because the insurance
Right, it's
won't cover
basically the reimbursement.
the reimbursement.
Right, so
I
we're
know.
working on that.
I think that's gonna be a long run, but I think that's what's even prevented it from going faster
So-
in the process for the telemedicine was the idea of reimbursement.
Right.
But I think that's gonna have to change, you know?
So Orrin Hatch is a friend of mine. He introduced the Chronic Act to cover it for ACOs last year, and then reintroduced. I met with him in New York and said, this is what we gotta do. He invited me to Washington. I worked with his people. We got it reintroduced. It passed the Senate. Now it has to pass the House. But that supports payment for
That's the
chronic
way
care
it is.
management, including remote patient monitoring and telemedicine. For the ACOs, there's a new act coming out called Connect, which will cover the whole gamut of telemedicine and remote patient monitoring. So that's where we're going with that. And the reimbursement will follow. So this is the company we're working with, Ideal Life. Next slide. Go
So
through these
there
quickly.
was, that's the Indian, or no, this is a new?
No, this is the Toronto company that
This is
ADT
just-
bought,
Okay.
that we're working with and connecting up to Kaiser.
Okay.
So when you get it, for those who like IT, I throw the slide up just to give you an idea of some of the schematics. This, of course, is very simple compared to all the stuff that's actually
the back
happening
end.
on the back end, but just give you an idea of the secure cloud and all the different players that touch the data. Next. So what's happening is there's a trend, and this is from Hospital Advice, this is from PwC actually. I used to work for them too. I was regional medical director for the Southeast. So you can see where it's going. We're going up. Outpatient visits is going higher per thousand, and inpatient visits are dropping. So that's the whole Nemours concept, and that's what's going to be happening with hospitals. They're going to be shrinking. They're going to have extra beds. But that's what you need to do. Next. Now, one slide. So this is Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs came out with a report in 2015 saying that you can save $305 billion a year by a combination of remote patient monitoring, telehealth, and behavior modification. So that's what we're doing. 200 billion is in remote patient monitoring, 100 billion is in telehealth, and behavior modification is undefinable, but infinitely large. This is the market potential, okay? So it varies. Next. So when you're looking at stocks to buy, all right, and you look at all the healthcare stocks, which is the biggest industry right now, everything else is negative. By way of comparison to the S&P 500, except for medical device, healthcare equipment and supplies. So that's why we're in that business. That's outpacing the growth in the S&P for the last year. So these are current slides as of yesterday. Next. That's why I put together a new slide to show you. So when we look at the five different segments or 6 different segments that we're looking at in healthcare, these are the multiples. Now this is what this is all about. If you're going to be in the business of medicine, you recognize it not only as a delivery system, but as a business. And everybody wants to they want to build and sell technology, and that's what's happening, and that's the way you make money. You leverage stuff. So a lot of times I ask people, what are the 4 highest paying professions in the country? All right, everybody says doctor and lawyer, right? And I say no. Lawyers, of the four, lawyer is the lowest, they make about 120 on average, this is all lawyers combined, including the trial lawyers that make 10 million a year. Then doctors, okay? The third is management consulting, which is what I would used to do, and still do to some extent. They make about 350 on average. Like the partners make 500 to 900 for PwC, Accenture, et cetera. And, but it's the investment bankers that trade on the deal that make an average of $989,000 a year last year on Wall Street. That's the average person on Wall Street. All right, why? Because they're getting percentage of the deal, all leverage. All those other three professions, it's hourly work, except for surgery, where you're getting piecework. The rest is hourly work, and you're limited by the number of hours in the day. In investment banking, the bigger the deal, the more money you make. Doesn't matter how long it takes. It's not, the time is not an issue. All right, that's why people go into investment banking, and that's where this comes into play. So you can see healthcare facilities like HCA, when I used to work for Rick Scott, and we built Columbia HCA, so I was president of their managed care division. This is what we're doing. We were buying $20 million in hospitals a week. Actually more than that. Yeah, more than that. But we had $20 billion to work with because we did a reverse merger, went public, got $20 billion, so we just started buying up hospitals. But you can see the consolidation of that is out. Your revenue multiples, what people are paying for that right now is 1.2, because it's all consolidated in a block. Now the for-profits are consolidating into these big chains, and ultimately we may have 6 or 7 big hospital chains within the next 10 years. Healthcare services are doctor services, okay? There's no assets in a doctor's practice. There's no economies of scale. All these companies were feeding off of consolidation in the hospital industry from HCA and Tenet, for example. And then these people, mostly lawyers, convinced Wall Street, hey, we should do the same thing with the doctors. Except doctors don't, you can't combine bricks and mortar, you can't combine systems. There is no economies of scale, and you're taking people who are entrepreneurs working 14 hours a day and weekends and saying, hey, we're just gonna put you on an 8-hour day, and we're gonna pay you the same thing you made last year as an entrepreneur, and we're gonna give you stock. I looked at that and said, this model is destined to fail, and sure enough, we made a lot of money keeping the people out of jail who went to jail because of the scams that they were pulling on Wall Street, and when Wall Street woke up, these things died. They're still out there, Sheridan, Pediatric Associates, other things.
So the big movers are the equipment and the technology.
Right. Managed care just is taking a huge bump right now. It's been going down because the Anthem, Aetna, Humana, and Cigna mergers were all blocked by the DOJ. I happened to be with Joe Swedish from Anthem at the time. But with CVS coming in to buy Aetna, this suddenly took a bump up this quarter, just in the last 2 days. But healthcare technology, you can see, and equipment and supplies is where the money is. This is all distribution.
And that's where the future is.
Right.
It's just gonna get better.
Right, so next slide, quickly. All right, so when you look at this stuff from an investment banking standpoint or a business standpoint, you're ultimately looking at the revenue and the EBITDA models. This is what they're trading at. So you're looking at companies like Medtronic, Stryker, C.R. Bard, et cetera. That's in medical device. Next. This one's in healthcare technology. So Cerner just got the DoD contract, they're getting the VA contract. That's an $11 billion play. Although their news just came out that because they focused so much on that, 22% of their contracts didn't close, so their stock dropped 8.7% yesterday. All right, but they're still up, trading at a 17 multiple. Athena Health, which started by George Bush's nephew, Jonathan Bush, out of a Harvard Business School project with another guy, Todd Park, who then became the chief technology officer for the U.S. government to fix Obamacare, to fix that problem. They're up at 41. They were up at 92 the last time I talked to you, but they've lost some accounts. Okay, but you can see these things are trading. Medidata wasn't even on this list last time. Now they're at 58 multiple. These are unheard of. Most companies trade between 8 and 12 multiples, or 12 to 20 in a hot market. You see these kind of numbers, it's amazing. So this is what's predicted on medical device, going to $500 billion.
We need to finish up, so.
Okay. And then I was just going to show you where, I think, this was the distributors. Now, if you take a look at the whole market, this was in 2016, you can see we're over 10 years, biggest returns, biotech and healthcare technology. Healthcare, down there. All right, consumer goods is negative. Chronic disease, we talked about, next one. This is some cognizant, and then just to show you what cognizant is on this, but next. I'm not gonna go into this is the reimbursement stuff. Let's just keep going. This is some of the reporting that we produce for you.
And this is with the, that was from the ADT?
Yes.
So
And
where-
then this is Brett's stuff.
Uh-huh. So where are you going now? So what is, since the last time I met you, you were with ADT, now you're.
ADT is focused on their LBO, and so
Okay.
they're not putting in the
So
effort
you're
in the
now
funding.
doing what?
So we're working with Cognizant now. Because
Okay.
Cognizant is putting in the effort and the funding, and we're cutting deals there. Another project I'm working on right now is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the #1 killer
And
in
so what are you doing there?
nutraceuticals. So
Which is what?
basically, there was a book that came out a few months ago out of UCLA saying the end of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the #3 cause of death in the United States, #1 in Europe. Okay, so there's a genetic test for it that has been discovered.
Right, okay,
Called
so you
APO.
take the test and then what do
APO.
you do? So let's say
So
I
we
have
charge
it.
for the test,
Okay,
and actually, we're on Dr. Oz 2 weeks ago, and then we'll be on Oprah in another 2 weeks.
okay, so you test
talking
for
about
that, and so let's say I have it.
So you
Now
do
what
a test. If you're positive for the alleles, for the genetic alleles,
Right,
and stronger if both parents have had them,
okay,
okay, then there's a protocol called the RECODE protocol. RECODE, which is another way of, it's called reversal of cognitive decline, which is actually recoding your genetics by taking advantage of that. Basically, they've trained 1,000 doctors in this protocol so far, and it is designed to reverse Alzheimer's by giving the brain the positive nutrients that it needs, because they found that the brain cells have what's called exosomes in them, which are suicide packets. And they find that when they're not getting enough
so
proper
is there a
nutrients,
certain,
the brain cells
certain
explode.
age that this works for versus?
It'll work for any age, but it's basically a wellness platform.
So is it like stem cells?
It's not stem cells.
No.
Stem cells don't seem to work in the brain. They've tried all kinds of different ways to do it, it's just not.
So this is basically through nutrition?
This is nutrition. And nutrition and nutraceuticals is gonna be the hot area, along with
And where's
proteomics,
this company?
epigenomics, and genomics.
And where's this company based?
This one's based in Texas and Louisiana, but it's funded by the guy who I was just meeting with yesterday. I'll see their factories tomorrow. Most of them are here in South Florida, where they're making the nutraceuticals. And they're actually adding cannabis oil to it, believe it or not.
So everybody be high.
Yeah, no, but it helps in arthritis, it's
Yeah.
anti-inflammatory, that's the whole key, is
So
anti-inflammatory.
it's,
But he's actually he was the CEO of Amway, and took Amway from 700 million to 14 billion. And so that's who I'm working with on that project.
great. Well, wasn't it great? So Dr. Gersh, we always have interesting opportunities with it. And are you looking, it'd be interesting for you to come back, maybe we can do something.
Sure, whatever.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, great. If anybody has any questions, anybody needs a
Yeah.
card?
Do you have any, what? Yeah, please, just undo. Thank you very much. You know, if you can, do you have any time? My next conference is
Sure. Yeah, is it right after this?
Yeah, right.
Hi, good.
I love your I have a class right now. Thank you. I'm Sabrina, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you guys just
She's
email me or
the-
call me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Did you get it?
Thank you so much.
Carly, you got it? Okay, so you got it. Thank you, Carly. No problem.
Well, if you can get in, because if you can get in and assist, then that's the best thing to do, it's the best training in the hospital. I did it. But I did it after high school.
Where to get
I came in, sorry?
For contracting, would you start a consultative rule, or would you?
You could.
There's a lot of movement on that.
It depends, whatever you can do.
The
to
way
do
they
it.
move and
So-
stuff. But I always check,
Check.
during his thing,
That-
was
that's
only
training.
saying not this one.
And then you want to do 2 years there and go.
For the
this.
caps,
If not,
My
if
cap,
not, you have to work for 2 years.
What is
to get-
uh,
get into business
the
school.
neurology department, like the neuroscience department, they have everything that we might need.
Would you recommend?
For our
like,
project.
Like
However,
an internship with pharmaceuticals
Since
and stuff,
I
would you
didn't do
recommend
anyone
just
in
getting
there,
any
they didn't let me
exposure?
in.
If you can't, let's say,
They
get into a consulting law right
They
off
didn't
the
even
bat,
let
they're
you
very
talk
similar.
anymore?
No,
We
they,
on farm.
you need to know someone because the door is always locked, they have like expensive equipment in
Uh-huh.
it. So
Okay.
if there's a card in their password, then you need to know someone has to like basically come and open the door for you, I didn't know anyone. So I did some research on them, they do have what we need, so we basically need to buy it if you already have it. However,
But would they let you test it out?
they will let you, like I said, they will basically, if you need, let's say, 10 caps, in order for us to run it for 1 month, you will, write to them, and you will let them, okay, my student,
Are you,
Amir,
when
will
you
come
were
and
getting
collect
into the
them.
Okay,
medication
who do I need to
management,
speak
is that all along the lines of like the
That I
opioid
don't.
epidemic and
So
everything
you
we're seeing?
find
friend
out.
doing
Okay,
that, right?
I'll look for it, so
Okay.
we can link you, the problem, the product, so we can basically start from next weekend.
Right.
Start.
Okay.
One more thing.
Yeah.
The data they're collecting is ultimately, as you propose, is to give it to it AI, you know, to be able to predict. Will you be able to share this data by any chance?
Share it with me.
I was just with them this week.
How did you get involved when you were talking about the legislation?
The only problem is it's gonna be de-identified.
You said you trained at Columbia, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. However, the thing is, because I do have
You work
a
for Dr.
project
Blood?
similar to yours.
I know, I forgot. I have some
I'm gonna start, cause I only got there on my interview day. I'll start next year.
So,
Oh,
since you're creating a.
Good,
an
congratulations.
an
That's-
AI
that's
scoring
very
system and all that.
I'm
I did my training there, my dad did too.
You need an AI.
Thank you.
I need help with common, like, and people back from that, and I need lots of data, so this will be,
Genomics and epigenomics.
beginning, basically,
Proteomics.
it will let me follow.
It's a study of the protein synthesis.
So,
Because
yeah,
that's
I'm working on a
basically
proposal for my,
We've already, now Venture, Craig Venture has split out the genome
I can show you
into
that.
230,000
But so, I think the first thing is find out
They're using
who
computer
over there, and
programming
basically what we can do is
chemistry
invite
to
them, because then what type
figure out,
of,
simulations,
not only
30,000 a
type,
minute.
but what are their
What's gonna work and
applications?
what isn't.
Because sometimes it's just being used for nothing, like
And
for
still,
trees, and find out what, capsules
APO, my
I'm
APO.
trying to dig someone out of
My
there, so you can basically contact and let them know that I am coming in.
Right, but it maybe what we can do is find out who the head of that
Yeah, basically what
department
it
is,
is,
and we
is
can
it's
let
an
them have them
apolipoprotein.
ask
It's a
them if they would like to come
the concept
speak, and
is
first
that
of all,
fat-
show us what they have, and then we
do
can
not
make a
dissolve
more
in
informed
blood.
decision, rather than we just
So what
wanna
happens
have
is
some
there's a shell, a
sick and
protein
some
shell, so
capsule,
your
but we
good
can also
cholesterol,
see
bad
how are
cholesterol
they analyzing the data.
Good
Because that's really the
cholesterol
key,
is
just
a
as
protein
well as
shell, anti-protein shell. It's really just a carrier,
get that,
it's like a package.
that data, what does it
The
mean?
bad cholesterol is when it's true
How do you eat it? How do you eat it?
It's the same
How do
thing.
you?
Yeah, that's very, and then,
It
we're already
does,
happy.
it does something, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not for us, it's not useless, and then, if it is of use, then you can even think about, in something like that, and look in the home environment,
Medicine.
like what he's talking about, that can be another.
Oh, yeah, that would be something.
But this is definitely gonna be in the future, it's just like you were saying before, the reason it hasn't grown as much as it could be, that whole telehealth is the reimbursement. Right,
That's why my hospital, I learned a lot about it because they needed a volunteer to shoot a commercial.
Right.
Yeah, I just have a lot of questions.
Did you guys?
But, because we don't do any of it in emergency, but they have like, they go to Russia, they go to
Especially
different parts of the
And
world.
how did they get
The
reimbursed?
medical device
So,
side more than the actual
like part, it's all
pharmaceutical side, but there's so much
funded, so it's
complexity.
all funded by someone's basic community. It's like,
it's a,
Charity.
it's like, but what it's good for them is one
Or
of the.
they're all private,
saying
like,
about
they're
Right,
private
right,
money
big
being paid
band,
for
right,
countries.
right, then I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go for a private,
Exactly.
I'm gonna see him as a private patient without insurance.
They have like, basically where they lose their vitals, but also like they do video chat, and they have stethoscopes so you can listen and diagnose the baby, go to the hospital.
Or they can just do it as a consult where it really fits, and then you can do a consult with another physician in another country. So it can be, when they used to talk about tourism health, that you used to go outside the country would get cheaper care. Right, you can bring it back here and say, okay, I can take some of those physicians and bring them back here, and then you can do a consult. The whole idea is how are you gonna get, would you mind?
I guess insurance aren't, I guess people are. The best stop, let's say if I'm in Florida and like everyone's getting consulted with a doctor in New York, and the doctor in Florida, so they want.
It's almost like the whole idea, I'm gonna my data to get my patients to go
Maybe
in
they're
another
gonna find
hospital.
some, yeah.
Pretty shitty game yesterday. Pretty shitty quiz this morning too. By which one? Lions? 4 in a row, bro.
450 yards.
That they gave up?
No, that we had without a touchdown.
You see?
Last time that happened was like 1930 something. Of course it would happen to us.
They were just talking about how our run game's like improved and everything too.
Yeah.
We got no end zone options.
We played well, except we couldn't score touchdowns.
Ebron actually did better than he usually does.
Yeah.
Especially towards the
I still
end.
think we should get rid of him.
Everyone does, bro. You see, he posted a picture of his baby on Twitter, and everyone quoted like, "Don't drop him."
That's funny. I saw that kid who had Ebron jersey on for Halloween.
Yeah.
He had brick.
Oh yeah, the brick hands.
Yeah.
That's funny, bro. I mean, Fells, like, everyone was saying Fells was a good backup, but he dropped the pass in the end zone.
Yeah.
Golden Tate's the only real hands, bro.
The thing is like Fells caught that one. That was like a good defensive play though. Like,
Yeah.
He had like perfect yeah.
Got him out of there. Still.
Yeah, four losses in a row, but they're all the good teams.
That's how it always is, though, bro. We can't beat any good teams. We only beat the teams we're supposed to.
Look at the rest of our schedule.
Is it easy?
It's not bad.
I don't want to, like, what's the point, though? If we can't beat a single good team, like, what's the point if we even make the
We can't win a
playoffs?
big game.
Sucks.
We need to win a big game for once.
We never do. It's only against, like a team that's pretty good, you know,
Yeah, like
at
the
the
Packers,
best.
the best we can do
Yeah,
this season.
because that's like a huge game.
Oh, radiology.
I have a friend who's a Bears fan, and he goes to games. I'm like, I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not too. Trubisky's been what, okay?
I mean,
You see the tight end, bro, with his leg?
dude.
You see, they were tweeting like, we're just trying to save his leg, not even his career. Like, he might even lose it completely. That's insane.
Dude, that's crazy.
Can you imagine,
He's
bro?
definitely done football.
Oh yeah, 100%. That sucks. He was good
Did you
too.
see it?
No, I didn't watch it.
Unless, like, if you don't want to, you gotta go
Zach Miller, right?
Yeah, Zach Miller. Injury,
It's an entire different market, and also evidence based, right? How many times was it not, we're just gonna do it because is there any evidence? That's interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll let you know.
Okay. All right.
That will be my next test.
Yeah, so find out who's in charge there, let them, and reach
That's
out.
just sideways, bro.
He caught it for a touchdown.
I know, but they didn't let him have it.
That's so bad. Just give it to him. Like, he's done.
Yeah, this is the last touchdown he's ever gonna have.
The captain, how are they in?
That's messed up, man.
That's the key.
Imagine how crazy that would
You get a
be.
bunch
Like,
of
Almost losing your leg.
like if he lost his leg,
Oh my god. I couldn't imagine, bro.
And then I'll get in touch with them by giving them your information, but like my professor and my mentor.
That's so fucked up.
Give them my email. Okay, they can get in touch with me. Okay?
I'll write you an email.
Okay, great.
See you on Wednesday. Thank you very much.
How'd you do on Saeed's today?
So how are we doing, guys?
I
What's
didn't
up?
touch that, except for number 7.
I didn't study at all, so I think I bombed
How are
it.
you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's good.
Doing well.
Good weekend?
How was the thing on Friday?
It was good. I was surprised. I was really surprised how many people showed up. There were hundreds. You know, I thought they would have like a couple of tables there. And there's a lot of been traditionally in IT, and in computer science are saying that they can
Try to
really
move
feel
over.
that. I've even met some that were, working for FedEx and logistics and so forth, and say, you know what, I wanna sit for the same that we have with the SOC, I wanna sit for that, and I've read all the books trying to get into the cybersecurity. See, there's, everybody is facing it. Okay, so, what have we done? So Jesse, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Okay, so what's up? So congratulations, did you take that job?
I didn't know how to do number 7, like.
What did you decide to do?
Highest salary.
Well, I have until April.
I just did drop resorts and then 0 as though we're an array. I was thinking like maybe he'll say like syntax sucks, but your programming sucks.
As long as you don't have to give them, get as many offers as you can, and you make, it's great that you can be in the driver's seat, you know what I
It
mean?
gave me a lot of time, because I know one
Like,
of
we're not gonna
the
get grades.
previous jobs I had,
At all? I thought he puts it in at the end and then just kind of throws it right
Yeah,
out
no,
there.
that's great, take advantage of the time, and something else comes up, you don't want
Really?
and also you're gonna say yes and then no.
Been alright?
You know, and you
I think so too, but I also feel like everyone does really bad, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of these kids aren't really tech kids, you know?
I think you just need to like study enough for these type of things so you can look like.
If I would've-
yeah. And then
so much like.
If I would have studied more than like an hour for this, I would have been alright. We got an exam Monday though.
we do.
I just looked, yeah, this class. I mean,
It's gonna be the same.
it's gonna be the same thing. Yeah.
Okay,
We'll have the
what
assignment done by
time
then. And then review on Friday. I just did select where for everything.
Yeah.
How do you
No,
how do you cross
select,
over though?
Select from where. I didn't use any advisor.
It's just select where. But how do you?
Select from where.
If there's like 2 tables that you're trying to select,
Yeah.
how do you do that? Select all of them? And
No,
then,
you don't. You select what he's asking for.
yeah. And
And then in the front is the other table.
I guess I'll probably get half credit for all of it.
Yeah.
I was like layering my fucking select statements.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, welcome back. We have a guest speaker here that some of you may have even, I don't know, some of you that were in my classes before. This is Dr. Stephen Gerst, who's an MD and also an MBA. And he's been involved in healthcare and healthcare tech. And he's really what I consider, honored for him not only to be a colleague, but a friend of mine that has been involved in a lot of mergers and acquisitions in New York. And it's basically all the time that he's graciously come to my health informatics class, and I asked him to stay over with you to talk about the business side and the stock market side of healthcare, and basically quickly to talk about what's the latest in healthcare. This is just so you know, this is a great class of mine in information security, cybersecurity. It's a combination of business technology students in the business school, some that are in finance, and also computer science.
Wow.
So we're basically, and some have been with me in health informatics and other courses, but they're basically really seeing what's the area in cybersecurity, and basically your projects you really could use. That's going to be an issue too in terms of HIPAA compliance and security. So I wanted you to give them a quick overview of basically what you're doing, and maybe we can spend some more time. You could answer their questions, but basically what are you proposing, what kind of companies you're looking at, and how security is coming into the role. And also what they've started looking at is, we've looked at some trading platforms, and we've even looked at the cybersecurity in the security market of those stocks and looking at which ones were, looking to be profitable as well. So I don't know if you want me to bring up some of those slides.
Yeah, we
to
can
give-
let's
and
focus
you
on
can-
just the finance one.
and focus on the finance and maybe give them an overview of where you're going, and then we can make a bit of, I didn't have him scheduled here, but he's done such a great job, and I just wanted you to get to know him of what somebody's doing in the booming area of healthcare, and also where you're gonna need your skills coming in, and, health informatics, and, Dr. Gerst has been, even though he has an MD, he's been involved more on the business side of starting with the hospital, starting with even, a number of ways, and now dealing with a number of companies, and it's interesting that you know that that's gonna be the future. So let me just go back to your, slides, and you can just give them introduce your background to them, and then we can even, you can start, we'll emphasize more the slides on the business end and the finance end, and then you can answer some of their questions, because we're really lucky, I think, honored really, we've been, friends for a while, and we've been trying to, work together, and we have some mutual, colleagues in mind, so.
Right, actually, the mutual colleague who introduced us was Mark Blatt, who was the chief medical officer for Intel for the last 15 years,
Yeah.
and knows Sarah from California.
Yeah.
So, just really briefly, my background, I trained at Columbia in New York. I cross-registered into business and law schools to create a health administration degree. This was 20, 30 years ago, before it was fashionable to do that.
Mhm.
And only Wharton and Georgetown had programs like that, so I told Columbia, you need this kind of program, and anyway, they let me do it. I was fortunate to do that, but I created my own program to be able to do it, and then I started right away with.
And what is this company, Telemetrics?
I'll get in, let me
Okay.
get into that. So, basically, I started with the big hospital company, Premier, 3,700 hospitals, largest group purchasing organization in the country, largest former of ACOs, Accountable Care Organization, right?
I don't think they know what ACOs
Oh,
are.
okay, well, we
So
won't go
they-
into that then.
Yeah.
Then moved to AIG and Crawford and Company, the largest insurance companies, and then to Columbia HCA under Rick Scott. So Rick was my boss, and we built Columbia HCA until the Clintons came along and displaced him, and I went to PricewaterhouseCoopers and became medical director for the Southeast for PwC. Was then hired by a client to come down here. We bought 7 HMOs and put together the largest HMO in South Florida. We sold that, and that we bought HIP of New York's HMO, those kind of things. We sold that to Coventry for $700 million, then sold Coventry to Aetna for $5.9 billion. And now CVS is buying Aetna for $66 billion.
So you can imagine that whole environment. So
Right.
what do you think about that deal, the CVS buying
I
Aetna?
haven't even looked at it.
No, but I mean, where do you think that's going in the future for something like CVS to buy? What's the incentive for
Because
CVS?
CVS Health, they got rid of cigarettes and everything, but it's not, I don't see it as causing a problem with the Justice Department under antitrust. And then they may pick up Humana and stuff like that and follow the same path. But I see it as a good move, actually,
Right.
and since
I do too.
since we are CVS's brand on the medical device company, I like that. So that's good, and I've been working with Aetna Digital, those medical directors there in New York, and their Medicaid people too, so I like I personally like the idea, I thought it was a great move. But why don't we go?
Yeah.
And so, just looking at, if you go back one, let's look at the economics.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the largest industry in the world. There's nothing even close to U.S. healthcare. U.S. national defense is the next largest at $1 trillion.
Can you imagine how many people knew that? For our country, healthcare is bigger than national defense.
As a matter of fact, not only is healthcare bigger than national defense, this last year, Medicare alone passed the expenditures last year in national defense. Now, that's gonna change under Trump. He's gonna cut back on the Medicare, cut back on these things, and increase national defense. All right, and he's gonna force this stuff down on the doctors, down on the hospitals. We're moving to a different financing mechanism. value-based care, and bundled payments and all that, so it's different, the opposite of fee-for-service. So that's what you're gonna be contending with going forward. And everything that we're talking about here fits in with that. But this was where, in 2007, under Clinton Foundation, put this together, we were projected to go from 2.3 trillion to $4 trillion unless something was done, and something was done called the Obamacare, and it was really the Accountable Care Act, which has actually curtailed this and kept it around $3 trillion. So what was projected has really been cut off, and now we're looking to not only bend the cost curve, but drop it through chronic, remote patient monitoring, chronic care management, yeah.
What does value care account, is it accounting or financing? What would that?
It's both.
What would that do for the?
Do you understand what value care is? Who understands what value care is versus fee for service? Maybe?
MACRA,
Okay.
MACRA, MIPS, APM.
No. Why don't we just define for them what the difference is between value care versus fee for service?
Yeah, you're basically, fee for service, you get paid, the more stuff you do, the more you get paid.
So when you went to a doctor, your incentive was to what? Give you more tests,
More services, et cetera.
more services rather than just to cure you, right? Let me give you 20 tests rather than one test. And basically what you're gonna be able to do, they were being able to reimburse for every test. So what it switched around and somebody starts saying, why don't we do this, have value care, and basically if you have a disease, basically we can give you money for it to help you, a physician help you with that disease, and then if you can save money, we can split the difference. Do you understand?
It's outcomes driven. It's gonna be basically, what's the outcome of the care, rather than, so, in the system, basically where we are today, right now, it's a combination of fee-for-service and capitation and other mechanisms to keep the cost down, fee sharing with the government to keep the cost down, stuff like that. And it's been effective, but not as effective as we need it to be. And I talked about this in the other class, the reason we need it to be is from a financing perspective, at 18% of the GDP, okay, everything you're wearing right now, everything in your hand, everything you do and produce that you want to sell overseas has an 18% load on it as an operating cost because of healthcare, because the employers have to
costs. Can you
pay your
imagine that?
healthcare, schools, et cetera, pays your healthcare. Okay, it costs an 18% of the overall revenue base. Your healthcare is funded by the university. They're paying 18% of their revenue for healthcare for the professors. Same thing in every business. When you compare that to China and Malaysia at 3 and 8%, we're behind the 8 ball by 10 to 15% off the bat. It's an inherent tariff in our trade and exports. Now, when you look at it that way, it's cheaper for us to buy goods from China and Malaysia than it is for them to buy goods from us, which causes a trade imbalance, which causes the dollar to fall, which causes our whole economy to go upside down.
Think about efficiency.
And allows China to take over the United States. Okay. Ultimately, that's the problem, the cost, having an operating cost that high. And when we compare it to other countries, next slide.
Yeah, look at this. Isn't
It's
it?
right here. We're good up until people are about age 50, 55. Then Medicare kicks in, and boom, you got a government payer,
These are
third-party
the
payer that's
costs per
uncontrolled.
country. So you understand, this is the United States, and look how we're really about the same, right at this point. So compare this to the UK, Germany, Sweden, and Spain.
Right, and the
cost
problem
of-
is the baby boomers. Okay, we were talking about this in the last class. Problem is that once you hit here and the baby boomers are hitting here, you got 20,000 people a day, or 18 people, or one person per 18 seconds that is turning age 65 and eligible for Medicare. All right, 60% of the 60% of healthcare today is paid for by the government. So, you know, you've got Bernie Sanders touting a single payer system and everything like that. What they don't recognize is we're already there. We're only 40% not government right now.
So basically, they say, don't let the government, I don't want the government, don't take my Medicare away, right?
Right.
That used to be the joke.
Right, yes, and the government's paying very little, so, but they still have to cap this in order for us to remain competitive in world markets. And so that's what we're working on, because 86% of this cost right here in Medicare is chronic care management, all right? 71% of every dollar, not only Medicare, but all healthcare dollars goes to chronic care management. That's people with obesity, diabetes, lung disease, heart disease, hypertension, all that stuff. That's where the money goes right now. And the biggest piece of that is in the hospital for acute care. So we can go to the next slide. I don't want to go into the ACOs, it's a little too complicated for those guys, but here's, let's go. So right now, 50% inpatient and outpatient is hospital costs. Third is doctor costs, then you got pharmacy and other. Next slide. Okay, so that's where we have to keep people out of the hospital, keep them healthy, all right? So we want to leverage technology into the home to keep people healthy, keep them out of the hospital, reduce the cost. So while everybody, how many people here have Fitbits or something along the line? Very few. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, but that's what we call the worried well. People trying to stay healthy. You get into a little older population, see everybody has these things. But that's only 3%, and they're trying to, that's 50% of the population, they're trying to stay healthy, okay, for longevity. But the cost is in chronic care and acute care. That is $1 trillion apiece. This is only 63 billion.
So 50% of the population basically is that 3%, right?
Right. So we want to shift this cost to these guys. We want to shift this down, and that's the leftward shift that Sarah's friend Mark came up with. The next slide. This is one thing. 35% of people, believe it or not, have 5 or more chronic diseases. 71% of people in this country have at least one chronic disease, and then the split. That's why it's such a big deal. But this is where we're going. Leveraging technology, using finance to support these companies to shift from the hospital, which is $1,000 to $10,000 a day, to the home, which is $1 to $3 a day. Huge jump. Huge impact on where you can go by leveraging existing technology into the home and connecting it up. So that's where we're going. Next slide. Market for that's 140 million people. Okay, almost half the country. This is from Kaiser. Next. 70% $70 billion market opportunity for those of you guys who like to make money. Okay, so I've hooked up with a company called Cognizant, which anybody here heard of Cognizant?
I'm actually a scholar with Cognizant.
You are? You're a scholar with Cognizant?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
This summer I received the diversity award with them for explaining a person in the IT sector that I found influential and like the things that I wanted to do for IT after I graduated.
Well, that is really, really good. They don't really advertise much because they're too busy growing right now.
And how did you find out about them?
I was looking online and I found them when I was a when I was a freshman. And I didn't have time to apply, but I applied again as a sophomore, and they ended up giving me the award like in the summer.
You didn't tell me. Congratulations.
Well, that's really good. I'm going to give you my card afterwards because I'm a medical consultant to them right now. But anyway, they started in '94. They're already a Fortune 205.
So their headquarters are where?
In Teaneck, New Jersey. But they're really virtual. And the biggest portion of the employees are in India. They have 275,000 employees now.
200 and what?
75,000 employees. And they only started
Who
20 years
is
ago.
bigger than that? Who is even anywhere near that?
There's some bigger companies.
But I'm just
You'd be surprised.
270, but I'm just, what?
Tencent.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're right, 10 cents, but maybe. Okay.
What is Tencent?
Yeah, Chinese.
Oh, okay. All right, well, China, yeah, you can see some. Anyway, so they're already up to a $40 billion market cap and growing. Their healthcare division is $5 billion now. Didn't exist 10 years ago. They just started the digital health division, which is growing. So Kaizen's a great company to look at. Let's go to the next slide. Their systems. They bought a company called TriZetto. Their systems touch 190 million people in this country. Their systems are used by almost every major insurance company and third-party administrator, which handles employers. 40% of all financial transactions in the country run on their systems. So they've gotten very big very fast.
Because of buying other companies.
Well, a combination of buying other companies. They had a different model.
Okay.
All right. Financial model, was leveraging technology, leveraging labor in this case. Because what they did was, even though they started off as Dun & Bradstreet Plan Services, which was their third-party administrator operation, they had set up operations in Teaneck, New Jersey. They actually hired a lot of Indian people, and they're run by an Indian
Outsourced.
gentleman. So they outsourced a lot to India, and they could get labor for $5 an hour when Accenture and PwC and all these guys are charging $500 an hour. I know that because I came from PwC. And they could throw 10 people at a problem who were well-trained and work more so, faster than, and it all started with the Y2K stuff. That's where it really started in '94, and just grown into this behemoth in the last 20 years. Pharma companies, 390 payer organizations, they're up to 100 health systems, pharma companies, et cetera. Next. So we don't need to go into this, we're gonna focus on finance, but what we're doing is we're putting sensors in the home. So ADT bought a company, that's the security company, home security company located here in Boca. They bought a company to get into the whole healthcare space because they already are the biggest in home security with sensors there, 10 million homes, 150 million sensors, so why not add a few more sensors? They already have all the infrastructure set up. So they decided to do this, they hired me and my partner from Epic, who's the medical director there, to try and sell this into the hospital and insurance market. And just as we were about to do that, Apollo, who you might have heard of, is the biggest PE firm in the country, decided to buy them, take them private from the public market for $15 billion. And then they just refocused on security and cybersecurity. So they're refocused on cybersecurity right now. And they're staying, and they're not really getting away from this because they're about to do an IPO and they want to say they're in digital healthcare, but they're really not making any effort. So that's why we hooked up with Cognizant to do this, because they are making the effort.
So
But this
basically
is what you're
Cognizant
seeing.
wants to do the same thing?
Yes, but they're
So
invested in
everybody
doing
understand
this.
what it is basically,
Putting sensors in every room of the house for health.
so instead of someone having to go to the hospital, then you can monitor them
At home.
at home. So you're gonna
So-
save those costs, and you think about the value part, that if I wanna cut down my costs and I wanna give value, then you're gonna be monitoring at home.
Right, because it keeps people out of the hospital, which is 50% of the cost, right? And on a $3 trillion system, that's a lot of money. Okay. So this is what we do. We have a cellular hub, which is like a cell phone, okay? And all these devices feed in wirelessly with a 300-foot range via Bluetooth, into class 1 Bluetooth that goes into this, and this signal goes up over AT&T and Verizon lines and straight into our cloud, and we then send directly to the doctor, the hospital, the insurance company, whoever needs that data, and even to the cell phone of the patient and their loved ones, so they can be continuously monitored.
So if you had a parent or a grandparent, then you could also monitor them from afar.
Right, so the whole prevention's worth a pound of cure. This is prevention. Pick it up early in the home before they're in the hospital. Okay, and that's the whole model. This is some of the equipment, glucometers, blood pressure cuff, pulse ox, weight scales. These are the connectors and hubs, communicators. Go ahead. And this was the whole model that ADT was number one in each of these fields, so adding health is just a product extension of what they were already doing before, Apollo decided to do something different. And this was the whole schematic. And you're gonna see this in the smart homes, like Lanier is part here. They called me down there.
You mean
ADT
Lennar?
Lennar actually called me down, because they wanna build
The
a smart
the
home.
builder, the home builders here in Miami.
Well,
right?
they built the digital clinic here, and they've put a lot of money into the University of Miami. They're
Right.
big supporters of UN.
Right, it has on our building here, it has Lennar
Right, and the
Foundation.
new digital hospital is built by them, okay, and funded by them. So they're doing smart homes right now, which is all digital. There's no keys, nothing. You walk in to your cell phone, say, Alexa, I'm home. The shades go up, the air conditioning turns on,
And then supposedly, then
everything.
you'll be monitored as well, so you can monitor all
Yes,
of this.
Big Brother is here, and we are paying for it. Call Alexa.
Yeah.
It's a really big sister now. Okay, so this is where we're going. Next. So, in the previous class, they said, does this fit in with the Internet of Things? And so this is AT&T's slide, where at 2014, there were 4 billion devices connected per second. That's everything you see in this room. You go around the world, it's going up to 48 billion devices per second connected to the internet. That's a lot of servers, that's a lot of Amazon cloud, and that's why Amazon went up $61 billion in value last week, okay, because their earnings were higher. What we're doing here is putting it straight into the electronic medical record. We don't need to go into that for this class.
No.
Just give you an idea of what we're doing, and we can keep going. This is the equipment and the kitting, and use of cell phones in the mix. We can keep going. Telemedicine is another piece of this. It's all the technology side, but what we want to show you is the value of this.
Right.
So, and this is, you know, patient compliance, and this is help by phone. It's called PERS systems. So, bought a company that does this called Ideal Life, ADT.
Who
ADT
bought Ideal Life, okay.
And that's how we got involved in this.
Okay.
And this is schematics, so next slide. Next slide. Just want to go to, all right, so here's a Goldman Sachs slide, since you guys are finance. Okay. They predict we can save $305 billion a year as a country by 2020 using a combination of remote patient monitoring, telehealth, and behavioral modification. And this is the savings, how they come up with that. They say that behavioral modification is infinitely large. It's hard to quantify because the more you engage the patient and their loved ones and the healthcare system, keep the people healthy, the more money you're going to save. Commercialization possibility of that is about $32 billion right now, according to Goldman Sachs. So when you look at the last year by way of the S&P compared to medical devices, you can see medical devices outpaces the S&P. Now that's not the same for any of the other healthcare sectors, and we'll show that in a minute. Why don't we go to that slide? Right here. Okay, so if you divide up healthcare sectors by finance, you get about 6 different sectors. Okay, this is the number you want to look at. You want to see what they're trading at, because all of this stuff is buy and sell. Build and sell. I mean, that's your whole goal in life, is build a company and sell it for a lot of money and then do it again. That's the people who make a lot of money, all right? Or go public, you know, one way or another. But that's based on these trading multiples, which is based on value, which is based on expected earnings, which is based on, you know, the quality of your concepts. So healthcare facilities is hospitals. You buy hospitals. And I used to do that with Rick Scott. We had $20 billion we could work with when we went public, and we're just buying hospitals every week. $20, $30 million a week we were spending. And bought, I don't know, 100 hospitals, 150. And then we did mergers, and we got up to 300 hospitals, et cetera. But the consolidation in that industry is pretty much gone from a for-profit standpoint. What's happening is the non-for-profits are now doing that through for-profit holding companies, but that's not easy to get into at this level. Healthcare services is doctor services. There's really no play in that. There's very little play, at least on the public markets. You have some big ones here called Sheridan and Pediatric Associates that are in play, but there's not a lot of money there. Managed healthcare, the Department of Justice blocked the Humana merger and the Cigna merger, you know, with Anthem and all that sort of stuff. And so there wasn't much play in that until CVS came along last week and announced they're buying Aetna. And now you'll see a little bit of a flourish. So that's starting to go up, but nothing that you guys can get into in the short or long term. So this is where the play is right here. Healthcare technology and equipment and supplies, and those are the companies you should be looking at. There are lots of startups in that space, and there's lots of opportunities for growth. Healthcare distribution is McKesson's Cardinals, where they sell, they're the Walmarts. They're the Walmarts and Amazons of healthcare supplies, you know, and drugs. That's what, and that's consolidated too. So the area that's not been consolidated, which has tremendous growth opportunity, is right here, and that's where you want to focus. Next slide. So when you start looking at companies and doing valuations as to who you want to be with, what you want to buy, you start looking at charts like this, which basically, these are all publicly traded markets, and you look at comps. You know, when you're trying to value a company, you look at market comps, just like you would in real estate for comps in the area. So you base it on stock price, equity value, enterprise value, and this is in billions, by total revenue, and EBITDA, gross profit EBITDA, and then you look at the margins and you come up with these multiples. And this is the bottom line as to what people are trading at. That's the number you wanna look at. So you compare healthcare equipment and supplies like Medtronic, Stryker, and these kind of guys, you look at their multiples, 14 to 20, and then you compare those to, next one, healthcare technology. So you see companies like Athena and Metadata, 41 to 58. Most companies trade at 8 to 12. This is, you can see, this is where tremendous plays are, all right? And it was George Bush's nephew that actually started Athena at Harvard Business as a project. You know, a lot of these things come out of business school projects. FedEx came out of a business school project, and Word, et cetera. There's a lot of these things. But this is what you start looking at, and that's what you're gonna need to know, is this stuff. And this just shows the growth. This shows where
Healthcare distribution.
compared to the distribution multiples, which is basically the play is not so much there. This is a public market, but you're not gonna buy any of these folks. But then look over 10 years, see where the past 10 years, see where the play has been. Healthcare technology at 144, biotech at 284, which is still
Versus here,
continuing.
diversified consumer is minus.
Negative, yeah. So, and the other big one is healthcare providers and services. So you can see where the big plays are. They're in
Biotech in the
healthcare.
health.
It's the biggest industry in the world. That's where the play is. You know, you can talk energy, you can talk all about this and stuff, and then we can just go on, because I know you want to keep it short. Just scroll through some of this stuff. Next. This is where Cognizant is up there, you can see it. Anyway, and I think this is where the government is now starting to fund chronic care management, so we're working on that. I'm going to Washington this week to lobby for more codes and higher reimbursement. Next. And this is who they pay, so we don't need to go into that. Let's just, next.
What is this?
This is some of the reporting that comes out of the systems. So you can see the real-time reporting. There's 48 reports. Next. More reports. And then this is Epic stuff. I don't know if you want to go through that. So that's pretty much.
So what is in terms of security? What are you guys gonna be doing with it? So you probably have to deal with a lot of the security of these devices. Is it for HIPAA
You're talking about
compliance?
cybersecurity?
Security, yeah.
Yeah, so with ADT's never had a breach, at least that's what they tell me. And they've refocused not so much on chronic care and Ideal Life products, but on cybersecurity for the IPO as to where they want to go with this, because they're known as a security company. You know, so it makes a lot of sense. But that's what they're doing. The biggest growth in hospitals right now is what they call CSIOs, or Chief Security Information Officer. All right, it used to be, when I was doing this about 10 years ago, we put together the first programs, educational programs to teach chief medical officers to be chief medical informatics officers. That is now shifting into chief information security officers. And that, and the HIPAA compliance, because, you know, Joe Swedish, for example, at Anthem, they were hacked for 80 million records. You know, once people get a hold of these records, they've got your social security number, they got your address, basically got your credit card numbers. Hacking these healthcare organizations that have all your private and personal information.
And your medical.
And your medical records. Now, I don't know what you can do with the medical records, but they have that information, they can scam you on the internet. You know, I mean, how many
Well, they can take that medical information, and then if it's Medicare or Medicaid, they can start,
and people fall
bilking,
for this stuff.
them.
I mean, I don't know how many calls I get a day right now out of Washington, or claiming we're the Treasury Department, we're the IRS, or you're being arrested or something like that. Call this number if you want to avoid it. It's a total scam. It's Guyana, okay? And it's a long distance call that gets charged to your cell phone and you don't know. But how many older people fall for this stuff? Okay? Now you have more information on that person, it's gonna seem more real. And you're gonna get more and more of these scams and more of these hacks. There's a website, actually you should go to this right now. You're gonna love this. Just, if you can pull up the website, Fortinet. Are you familiar with that? we had a cybersecurity lecture for the American College of Healthcare Executives.
You mean Fortinet.com?
Yeah, Fortinet.com. And watch this. No, that,
This is Fortinet.
no. Let's go. Do cybersecurity, Fortinet. You're gonna see all the hacks that are happening, 100,000 hacks a second from all over the world,
Yeah, there's a
in
lot.
real time.
Oh.
Let me see, Fortinet, right.
The real-time.
Cybersecurity.
The real time.
Real-time stuff. Have you seen this?
Yeah, which one?
This-
This one, the report?
Yeah, I think, well, that may be a
Dr. Rush?
report.
Yeah,
It's, if you go to, threatmap.forti.com.
That's
yeah, threat map, right?
That's better.
Threat map Fortinet, right?
Yeah. Okay. Now this comes up,
Right.
you're gonna see, this is in a ratio of 1 to 100,000. This is real time right now. Where everybody's trying to hack everybody. Okay, so you see these things shooting out of China over to Ireland, England, Ireland, why? There's big tech centers in Galway, right here. Okay, these are where it's emanating from. This is real-time stuff in 100,000 to 1
But you
ratio.
look at that in that Silicon Valley too.
Yeah, they're hitting Silicon Valley, they're hitting LA, they're hitting New York, they're hitting Kansas City,
Not too
Cerner,
much here, you see?
right?
Miss Florida.
Venezuela. Okay, get an idea.
Yeah.
That's cybersecurity. Right there. Every second of the day, hundreds of thousands of these hackers trying to get into systems. And it's not only them doing it to us, it's us doing it to them. So anyway, that's kind of where we're going with this.
So what is your biggest challenge, Stein, going forward?
Right now, it's adoption and financing. So
Adoption from whom?
adoption from the hospitals and the payers.
From what? Because they don't see the incentive, they don't see they're afraid
Yeah,
it's
you
taking
gotta
away
pilot-
business?
No, you gotta pilot it first, and it's new. Now, I mean, I've done this 4 times already, nobody knew what a PPO was, I built the first nationwide PPO. No one knew what provider-sponsored HMOs were, I did that. No one knew what hospitalists, so I built the first hospitalist company, a second hospitalist company in the country.
What do you mean by that?
Hospitalists are where you hire an outside company, like an ER management company, to do all your internal medicine. Okay, and so
Basically, you
it
outsource.
started here in South Florida with Humana, with a group called Adam Singer and Jeff Taylor, who formed a company called IPC over in California. But basically, what you do is you go into the hospital, and just like the hospital administrators will subcontract for ER services, for ER docs, so they don't have to manage them anymore. And it's falls
So
on.
you outsource
do-
management?
Yeah, outsource medicine. And
Right.
so we went into hospitals, there were just 3 of us at the time out of Atlanta. And we've proven the concept at Emory and we've proven it at other places. Basically, the sale is, hi, Mr. Hospital, we would like to take over all your inpatient medicine. You'll pay us $300,000 per doc, for doctors you don't even know, that we'll do the credentialing of, and we'll take over everything that you're doing. You can imagine the flack you're gonna get from something like
So-
that,
so
and
the
how
one-
hard it was to do it. But 10 years later, every single hospital in the country has hospitals.
So are you
Some
ready,
have 100
so
to
you,
200.
so you have the technology ready to do in-home
We have it all.
monitoring?
It's all being done. We've been doing this for 15, this company's been doing it for 15 years, they just haven't had sales. So what happened was, I bumped into ADT at a Connected Health conference about 3 years ago, and asked them how they told us about the company that they bought and the services, because they were bidding on the VA for this.
Yeah.
And, the VA was having problems, as everybody knows. And I said, well, how are you selling it? They said, oh, we're using our door-to-door people, they're security people that install these monitors. I said, no, you can't do that. They don't know anything about blood pressure and EKGs, they can't handle the questions. You need to sell this to the hospitals who are at risk for readmissions and the insurance companies who are at risk. I said, well, how do we do that? I said, we can do that for you. And then we said, what do you do with the data when you get it? Oh, it sits on our cloud. Well, how does it get to the doctor in real time to alert them that there's a problem? We haven't figured that out yet. So that's where telemetrics came about, is they said, would you guys form a company and we'll subcontract and we'll give you the rights worldwide to do this? So that's
So
what we did.
telemetrics.
Telemetrics is what we formed as a company in order to do that.
So you're the go-between, what are you guys then?
Yeah, we were working for ADT to do this,
Okay.
and then they decided that they didn't really want to
So
be in the
now you're
business anymore.
going with this Cognizant, is that it?
So now Cognizant's hired us to, because they do want to do that,
Okay.
and then we're working with some other companies as well to pull this all together into one integrated. fully
And you have
integrated platform.
you have a pilot yet?
Oh, we got lots. Yeah, we're doing Memorial, UM wants to do it with us, UNC is up and running right now, University of North Carolina, they want 430,000 people in it. Partners at Harvard is giving us the whole thing. We're Cerner's partner now, or Ideal Life is Cerner's partner for 900 hospitals and 27,000 locations. So we're piloting there with Intermountain and Banner, and they're in control of the DoD and the VA. So ultimately, Ideal Life is probably going to get the Department of Defense and the VA contracts all through Cerner. So Cerner's reps are just starting to push it out. UAB is going to start with us. Cook County starting with us. I've got New York Health and Hospitals have been emailing me all day. When can we get started? Mount Sinai's going with us. You know, we're just starting to get this out. Okay, and so anyway, it's going to catch on. 10 years from now, everybody will have remote patient monitoring, chronic care management, and the reason is it's patient real estate. Once you have patient information flowing into your systems and nobody else's, you own that patient. Okay, what happens right now is hospitals are currently spending hundreds of millions of dollars buying smaller community hospitals in their state as feeders into their tertiary high-cost facilities for those critically ill, all right? If you put these devices and get the insurance company even to pay for it in the home, you own that patient. You bypass the community hospitals and you have all the data. So you triage them electronically through your home health care nurses to decide who comes to the hospital and who goes in the clinic, and it's based on how you're being paid. So if you're under a value-based system, based on outcomes, and you get more money for keeping people healthy, you're gonna go with one of these systems.
So everybody understand that value base is the key here. I can give you $100,000 for that heart patient, and if you can help them
You
for
can keep them out of the
15,000.
hospital for 15,000
You
or
get
less,
the rest of the
or
money as
$10
profit.
a
You get it
day.
as, I give you 50,
You're making
if it costs you,
$100,000 per
and if
patient.
you have to readmit that person, you eat up the cost. It's almost like Dr. Gerst says, you remember when you get, they go and fix your carburetor, you go back to the mechanic again, and your carburetor wasn't fixed right, you go back to the mechanic, he's not gonna charge you again. He's gonna fix it until he fixes the job. Well,
But that's
that
not
used
the
to-
way the healthcare system works.
The
They
health-
charge you both ways. But
So
that's
they keep
changing.
on charging, every time they screw up for you, you keep on paying. So this case is basically a new one. So I really see it in terms, really the key here for these folks is think about the cybersecurity aspects of this.
On a related note, Dr. Chris, I had a question for you. Can you speak to the sort of startup market when it comes to healthcare technologies? I mean, I worked previously with a company called Sensogram Technologies, which is based out of Plano, Texas, and they've been doing working on sort of monitoring devices, much like some of the ones you speak on for the past few years, and they're sort of starting to gain traction. But you know, it seems to me that there's quite a market there. Is the demand being met for all these technologies?
Comes down to who's paying for it, who's the payer. Right. A lot of these models that we're going up against, like Philips and Welsh Allen and those kind, they're not connected to the Cerner system. We beat them out. We beat out Philips.
Everybody
and
know
Welsh
what the
Allen.
Cerner said, there's something called electronic health records that they have. And there's basically, two players you'd say, Cerner and Epic and.
On the hospital side, Allscripts and Meditech.
So there are basically 4 of these electronic healthcare records. So the idea is not just to have a standalone device, but it should be integrated with the electronic health record. And how do you get that electronic health record? They have some what they call APIs, right, that are being, so it usually is, think about when you get your weight, right, if you're at the nurse and then she looks at your weight and then she's gonna have to enter it into the system. You don't want a system like that. You want already your scale to be set where you get that weight, and it's gonna actually be put into that field where it says weight of your record. So the key here is how are you gonna get those health records, and there's only a few, less than a half a dozen of those healthcare record companies, how are you gonna get them integrated into this home market? So all of your digital information will be then put into your record. So that's gonna be the key. So you just can't have a standalone device. You just can't have like your Fitbit or anything else just be standalone. It should be able to integrate with your record. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, now, what Sarah was saying is there's about 4 major ones for the hospitals in the US, there's others in other countries. There's over 2,000 for the physicians, okay? And then they have to be interoperable and, you know, it gets a little messy. But the 4 major ones we've talked about, so they're the ones we're concentrating on. Epic alone, what they do, like at Memorial and stuff, is they use a franchise model. So the hospital actually sells it to the physicians. And so they have 50% of all physicians' offices on the Epic system.
So they'll be the same as what their hospitals, they're practicing.
Right. And they subsidize it, they'll subsidize 50% of the cost just to keep the doctors from the area on their system.
Right.
It's owning the digital space.
It's owning that record, it's owning that patient, owning that record. So if you
anybody-
get, there's that conference where they call it a HIMSS conference where they have tens of thousands of participants.
55,000.
Right, every year, and they have, what's the biggest one is the healthcare, and who's gonna get into it? Apple is gonna get
They're
into
in.
it big time.
We're
You know
competing
that
with them.
Google, you know that Amazon, nobody's gonna leave that space.
Article came out on the way down here that Google's getting into that healthcare space.
Well, they've tried before. Microsoft has tried. All of these guys have tried, but what they need is integration. Even Google and Microsoft used to have what they called health vault system. And what did you have to do is you could then have your health information on the cloud. But what did you have to do? You had to type it in. Who wants to type in all those statistics,
so
right? It's silly. So the whole idea of that integration, think about on your watch and other electronics is that, and think about Amazon, basically, there'll be 2 areas. You'll have the physical area, like at Amazon buying that Whole Foods, right? Or an area, but what you're gonna really do is bring it more to that home base.
Yeah, and some of my partners are working on Wild Oats and Walmart right now together.
Yeah, and
So-
Walmart is getting into the healthcare space, it was wanting to get into that.
Oh, they're gonna set up centers, healthcare centers right in the middle of the Walmart store.
Right,
They
well, it's
started
just like
that.
CVS, right? And even, when you think about it, if you go to Target has CVS now inside of their many clinics where you're
And they
gonna
all
have
run
the.
on the Epic system.
Right, and then you're gonna think about it, you're gonna do online apps to be basically registered, and where it's gonna, I see a big thing is the telehealth part. And before, only reason why telehealth hasn't taken as much of a steep uptrend is because of reimbursement. Physicians weren't getting reimbursed from the insurance companies using telehealth. You know that's gonna change. So there's even, I don't know if you've talked about, even LiveMD and all the other
MD
ones.
Live.
MD Live.
Yeah,
has
so
been
there's
here.
4 or 5 major telemedicine companies out there. One's based right here.
Right,
Anybody heard of John Scully?
yes.
You have. Anybody else heard of John Scully? Ever heard of PepsiCo? Ever heard of Apple? He
Right.
was CEO of both. He's the one who kicked Jobs out.
Right, for a
All
short
right?
time.
He lives here, and he's invested in telemedicine. He's chairman of the board of MD Live, a telemedicine company that has Humana and Walgreens as their clients.
So one thing I like about it is if you think about South Florida not being the Silicon Valley, the one area that investors are putting money in South Florida is the healthcare sector. And a lot of
Because
that.
This is Medicare haven.
Right, so a lot of these companies that have come down, and they have even a lot of accelerators now in the healthcare market here.
Yeah, and speaking of the financing side of that, South Florida is the most expensive market. It's not the most expensive, it's the highest level of reimbursement for Medicare anywhere else in the country except Staten Island. Okay?
Because of the numbers?
Because the way Medicare reimburses is called the AAPPC, or the average per capita rate. All right, so they take the average spending for doctors and hospitals by county, and they use a factor in there and come up with what, and they take 5% off for the reimbursement. Well, you've got so many retirees, you know, they call it heaven's waiting room
Mhm.
down here. But it is by far the largest, and the reimbursement here is twice as high as it is in New York, for example, except for Staten Island. The most expensive market, believe it or not, nobody's gonna be able to guess it, you might be able to guess it, but the actual most expensive healthcare market in the country is in Birmingham. Birmingham, because
Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama is the most expensive healthcare.
And why?
Because the Blues are on the boards of the hospitals, and the hospitals are on board of the Blues, and they just kept raising everything up. So they all incentivize their salaries and take it out of the employers, and it's an oligopoly, and 80% of coverage is between between Alabama Blues.
And what happened to that company where you had the thermometer?
So,
He was involved with the thermometer, you
yeah,
didn't
so
have to touch
we've
it.
you
wanna talk more about that problem?
Yeah, so I didn't bring one with me, but the way I got into this
What was it
was
called?
a few years ago, ARC Devices.
Art Devices?
Yeah, pull that up. So, I've been in I've been in venture
This is
capital
that.
and health IT and all that stuff, but I wanted to get into medical device, cause you can see the multiples. But for me, you know, if I was to do it, I'd do it with Medtronic or Philips or one of the big companies, but I don't have a bioengineering or biomedical background, so I happened to meet these guys at a bar. They just came off a yacht in Fort Lauderdale, and they were from Ireland. And, you know, Medtronic did a reverse merger, you know, an inversion. A lot of companies, because of taxes, the big companies like GE and Medtronic and all these are Irish companies or Swiss companies to avoid 37% corporate tax, because they can get it at 12% in Ireland and 15% in Switzerland. So GE is not a US company. Either is Medtronic. Either a lot of your biggest companies they're foreign companies now because of the tax and the repatriation of those taxes. So these guys were doing a reverse merger, and this was CVS's brand already. They already had CVS. Bumped into them in a bar, and they showed this to me and said, "What do you think?" It's
So this, you
Apple-like,
don't have
you
to
know,
put anything
everything.
in your mouth, you just put it in
It's
front of your
infrared. It's
Yeah.
infrared
So you
on your
push a button,
forehead, and then
yeah.
it will
If
take
you
it
go
to-
into any CVS, you'll see us on the shelves. And anyway, they were showing it to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Great, is it connected?" They goes, "No, it's mobile." I said, No, is it connected to the EMR, the electronic medical record? They said, "What's an EMR?" I said, "Guys, if you're not connected via Bluetooth to the EMR into a hub, in the next 2 years, you're out of business." They said, "Really? What are you doing next week?" And they invited me over to Ireland to meet with their board and maybe chief medical officer of the company to tell them what they needed to do in order to get into the US market. And so we did this initially, but things moved very quickly, and so I brought in a friend of mine from MIT who developed the PET MRI for GE. And he's revamping this, we tied in with Intel and Motorola. So, you know, Hello Moto, have you seen those? So it's gonna have ARC technology in there, be on the back of your phone, and using an Intel Flex IoT platform. So that's all just starting to come out now. And so.
So are you still involved with them, or?
No, I'm an owner, but ADT brought me over, and I needed a bigger platform because we weren't getting a lot of traction just selling thermometry.
Right, you need to have.
Without being a connected platform. And then when ADT had this platform, they wanted the thermometry, but then when we asked them these questions, they offered us a job to say, "Hey, we'll give you worldwide rights, me personally, and we'll pay you X dollars." And I was like, "Well, that's a lot better than I'm doing here."
Yeah.
And it was down the street, so I said, "Well, why not? I can put the two together," which we did. But I went to the ADT side. So that's what happened. So the newer technology will be out sometime next year.
And it'll be part of the phone.
Yeah, because everything's going to a phone app.
Yeah.
So I just want to get like a quick understanding of a summary of this. So the future of, I guess, medical technology at this point is IoT devices that connect instantly to software that then fills fields of information that are used for patients.
That's correct. So that's a very good summary. Basically, what people say is if you're not in the software business in 5 years, you're not in business. Okay, devices and stuff like that are going to be commodities. They're plastic with a few chips in them, right? Qualcomm, you'll see their name around a lot about doing all these prizes and X prizes and stuff like that. They've got 2,000 device manufacturers that they have made partners. All they want to do is put their chips in. So Cerner was originally with them. We kicked them out because they weren't actually marketing or selling their product in an integrated platform. They alluded to the fact that they would, but they've never done it. So Cerner got rid of them and pulled in us. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to see. Is this? It's all going to come down to the software. That's where the margins are. That's where the control is. Okay.
And
Devices
integration, it's just not
you
even
can be
software,
agnostic
but
to
it's the
devices,
integration.
and they'll become commodities. Right. So you're right. So that's why I've hooked up with Cognizant, because they're a software company. They build software. They don't build hardware. They build software. And then we can use anybody's hardware as long as we can connect it up through the software. So that's you're right on target. That's where it's going.
And basically, you think about those EHR or systems that we're talking about, like the Cerners or the Epics, they have to grow with times too, because people are leaving those hospital systems and doing things at home or on the go, so they have to be more integrated, because they traditionally have been old systems that were just on their own. They weren't even, they were just like client server systems.
Right.
So they weren't part of those systems too. They were way behind. So other people could go in basically and say to them, you're charging so high fees, maybe we'll come up with another EHR system, electronic health record system, that is much more nimble and much more mobile.
And what Sarah's saying is not only mobility is critical, but workflow. Because we're all so busy, and the doctors are so busy, and they get so many alerts, and they got so much stuff to read, so much stuff to do. You want to make it part of their workflow. So you'll see a company called Validic, which Mark Cuban owns, okay? They claim 163 million users. They attach everything to the cloud. It doesn't go anywhere. It's in the cloud. The patient can look at it, but you have to do a permission-based system to get it into the system, and no doctor is going to toggle out of one system to try and look at the data in another system and then be liable for it. So there's a flaw to their market, their model. The only model, and I could be with any of these companies, the only model that I've seen is the one that we have here with Ideal Life that actually works, is an integrated, and it's already been selected by Cognizant and ADT and the big companies who are critical.
And think about all the wearable devices.
Yeah, those are coming along.
You know what I'm saying? Where's that all that data going to? That's the key. And where is it going to be integrated?
Right, and that's a very good point, because I had a call on that just today with a pharma company. So we're staying away right now from the wearables, because they're not 510K approved, and you don't want to get data overload and alert overload for the doctors, or they'll just ignore it. It's like pinching your skin. After a while, you don't feel it anymore. You don't want to get the doctors immune to the data, so you only want to give them alerts.
Well, that's the same thing in cybersecurity. A lot of these systems now, they get so many alerts and nobody pays attention to any of those.
If those are connected, then what about hackers? Because if hackers can get into the system, I mean, you look at some of these big hacks that have taken place, how did they get in? They got in through the refrigerator system into a health insurance company.
Well, even Target through their POS.
Right, through something like that. So you get wearables that are not certified devices and stuff like that. You're looking at cybersecurity issues. So yeah, it's convenient, yeah, it's this and that. The interesting thing was today I was talking with a big pharma company, and they want to do clinical trials using this and have continuous data feeds, continuous.
So then
and they asked me about wearables. Can we integrate wearables? And I said, sure, we can integrate wearables. But then they're coming down here, and then I'm going to tell them, but do you really want to?
Well, it's the beginning. It will be eventually, but their idea in that mobility. Think about clinical trials where somebody physically, first of all, they may be ill, physically has to go somewhere to do the clinical trial. Wouldn't it be even better to do clinical trials at home? At that home setting?
That's what they want to do.
So that's going to be
and they're not, and I didn't want to say anything, but I was just at Harvard last week with the Connected Health Conference, and one of our competitors has already done 50,000 patients on clinical trials for other drug companies. So you can see this is going to happen.
But you're thinking of so many. So I just wanted you to see kind of like where, not only where the cutting edge is, but we're in the background in terms of business where someone's doing those mergers and acquisitions and where that money is. And behind the scenes here on all of this has to be the security aspect of it.
Right.
Because of all these devices here. Think about the simple ones of even the Equifax types of things where they're getting their data, but think about the sensitivity and also the systems where I can hack in and I can break some things.
Exactly.
Into those systems. Not only hack it, but if I wanna do some damage. And think about that infrastructure that's being, so in the home, even think about utilities where we're doing that infrastructure, where we can gauge those. And I don't have to
Yeah,
have
and a
any
lot of these
meter
are,
systems.
like Cognizant, we're already attached to Alexa. Okay, and it's the cell phone apps. And when you go down to the Lennar stuff, you know, you walk in, Alexa, we're home, everything turns on. Alexa, we're leaving, everything shuts down, saves energy. You know, TVs, everything goes off.
So in
Straight
terms of
program.
measuring your time.
Yeah, and then up at Tavistock, up at Lake Nona, in Orlando, Tavistock's building 20,000 smart homes up there, where they've tied in GE and Cisco and Johnson & Johnson technology for eating and nutrition, and my daughter's got her master's in nutrition now, and so they're coming out with new nutrition labels that highlight certain things that the refrigerator can read, so it tells you, it can monitor your eating habits, you know, and tell you what's nutritionally healthy and what isn't, and that'll all tie in with these systems. I mean, this is a huge area, and there's so much opportunity for anybody who wants to get into it.
Oh, so you were saying, since a lot of the money's flowing more from the hospital systems to like these mobile systems, and companies like Epic and ADT have the hospital systems. You kind of mentioned a little bit on the projects where they're trying to get their software integrated. Are there any like big projects that they're putting forward to try to, like I guess, monopolize the system so that they have their software and all the systems for the mobile technologies, since it's
Ooh,
moving
Epic
away
and
from the
Cerner?
yeah.
Oh yeah, they compete viciously
Okay.
for this.
For the
Yeah,
mobiles.
they're different models. It's very interesting because Cerner is publicly traded and Epic is not. And Cerner will sell anything, you know. They're just out to make money, but they're selective about who their partnerships are with each product, because then they turn their sales force loose, which they just did on our product this last 2 weeks. And they try and make margins on that. Epic will not do that. Epic does not sell hardware. They do not sell other people's software. If they see value to it, they'll build it themselves.
Okay.
And so my partner is the medical director at Epic, and he advises Judy, who's the owner, on.
So is he still with Epic or he left Epic?
He left Epic, but he's consulting with them every 2 weeks, Judy. He has meetings with Judy as to where to go and who to work with and stuff like that, because he's out in the field. And he's seeing things that she's not. And he's been there 14 years. He built a company from 850 employees to 15,000, and from 150 million to 4 billion. So
It's the
he's
integration.
trusted by-
I see the bottleneck is the integration
Mhm.
part. And there, I think that reimbursement will come.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see at the Cerner conference recently, there's 25,000 people that go to this conference, just their user group. And these are just the high-level people. And, I mean, we took up the whole Sprint Center just for every meeting, because there's so many people there. But they've, like 3 years ago, brand new, everything was going to tablets. I mean, tablets by the bedside, tablets here, doctor's gonna walk around with tablets. Gone. It's all cell phone apps. It's all Dragon, it's all Nuance.
How many
Dragon.
people have tablets anymore? You know?
Nobody has tablets. I thought tablets were too hard to work with.
Yeah, no, but
Now it's into the cell phones, because cell phones have the connectivity, they've got Dragon, you know, they've got all this kind of stuff. All the new platforms for Cerner are all voice activated on your cell phone.
Yeah.
You know, it feeds right into the medical record system. So that's where it's going. And Epic is, another difference between the two companies is Cerner's all modular. So you buy different modules and they plug and play. Epic is customized. So you buy a shell for $500 million or $1 billion per hospital system. And then you have to hire 400 people to customize.
But that whole area is geared to be disrupted.
Yeah.
think about, you know, when you think about like finance being disrupted and other areas and, to be disrupted, that healthcare was working so inefficiently
Right.
that
But the
before,
trick
think
is
about it.
now to keep these companies from being disrupted.
Right,
And that's the next thing, that they could be disrupted.
yeah.
So that's what they're scared about.
Well, they're scared that somebody else is gonna come with an EHR that's much more efficient, starting off in a mobile device rather than from the old technology of 20 years ago.
Right, because Epic's
Of
built
a
on-
client-server-based system that's charging, how much do they charge an Epic system to a hospital?
$500 million to $1 billion.
Look at
And
that.
then you have to hire
And think about it,
400 people.
even if you got it for 10% of that cost, you could make a fortune on it. So if you could disrupt something like that, they better be scared, companies like that, because they're gonna be, in 5 years, they say, hey, we don't need something like that. And those people they're gonna start, in my opinion, gonna start with those healthcare and say, we're not gonna pay those crazy costs. And if you can be in that wave there, just like in a fintech wave, I think this is, if they don't move with the times are gonna oversee them, overcrush them. But you can kind of see think about your own mobile devices and think about the way that you want healthcare to be presented. Why not do it at home? And why not do it in that chronic care area that needs to be? That can be flipped around too, and you can even have that, a lot of the services done for them. And then think about it done as value.
So with the connected systems and the Bluetooth and the things that you guys are trying to ship in home, and with kind of the way that Moore's Law has been affecting technology as a whole,
Yeah.
and with everything pretty much being obsolete within the next 1 to
Yeah.
2 years, what kind of things are you guys putting in place as far as updating the systems?
Yeah, that's
I
a
mean,
good question.
when this does explode, now, I mean, it's pretty much worldwide, it's gonna be a lot of tech refreshing and hardware updates that you guys are gonna have to put in.
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that, just yet.
But
Everybody's
that's
looking
gonna
at
be and that's the problem even traditionally have been with the ADTs. They've been, think about it, they've been a stodgy company when you really thought about ADTs and how many new, competitors have been in that security space, that I don't need that whole old systems, you know, even think about Xfinity, when they think about, you know, how Xfinity was gonna do security. And one time
Yeah,
I
they're-
called them and I said, what are you gonna offer me? And they bought these old cameras, you know, that I don't know where, and they had these guys come in and I said, are you crazy? You think I want that? And then, can I have two-way audio? No, you know, I mean, things like that they're not as nimble
Right.
of an
And so-
ADT. You think about those stodgy companies, but that's one thing that I think you make a good point, is that it's gonna have to be nimble. And then you're gonna be able to see those devices are gonna be so cheap, and then you see those companies that are
Right,
slow to move.
so you got the cable companies who are already in the home starting to offer security services.
Yeah, but if they're
Eventually,
security,
they'll be offering the healthcare and the connected health
Right,
services
right, but
as
the
well.
question is, are they gonna?
There's a difference though. I looked at that carefully as to whether or not I consider them competitors at this point. The difference is they're not mobile. Our system's mobile.
Right.
It's cellular. And if you're living in New York, but you travel to Florida and you need to be continuous in work, you don't take your cable company with you, but you can take your device with you. So it's cellular.
That's where I see those guys like Google and Apple are gonna be there. And then you can have, in the background, then you can have some intelligence, almost like IBM has tried to do, like the Watson and so forth, in forecasting, in the AI, in the intelligence part of it, to be able to do intelligent warnings rather than just flooding your people. But you need to be nimble. And when you have those, I think that's a good point, when you start to show those slides of that technology, it's already, by the time you're gonna implement it, it's already obsolete, that you have to have it almost as modular, that the device doesn't matter. What I have is I have the infrastructure, and then when there's new devices, and it's almost like those devices I'll have free, what I'll have is almost, I'll give away those devices.
Right. Yeah, so on the device side, for example, you make a really good point. One of the reasons this company manufactures their own devices is because they're prepared with the patient. And these other companies that are out there that are doing it, including Google and including Apple and stuff, there's a whole big procedure to try and set the thing up. And it's a little too complicated for most
No.
86-year-olds who are
Well, not now.
have medical problems, right? There's other companies, it's just too difficult. This has been tried and tested over 15 years, they've made their mistakes, and that's why I like this company, because all the bugs are worked out. Now it's just a matter of sales, and it's a land grab out there right now, you know, and then it'll all
It
consolidate.
definitely will be there, it's just like, and it may change as we go through. They may be, it's a way in which you can say, okay, I'm a partner. You have to figure out who are the
That's
good
right,
partners.
and all that stuff's happening.
Well, thank you very much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate we weren't expecting this, but I just wanted you to see kind of, those are issues in which to do it, to have it. But thank you very much for staying with us. I apologize. We'll do the continuation on Wednesday. You know, we have the presentations of the lab, and I put up another quiz for you that you have it. And I just wanted to, if you can just stay here for another 5 minutes, and then we'll continue. Anyone wanting to stay with me, but I appreciate Dr. Gerst's interest in that you're always trying to do another company. And you can see you always have to be flexible too. When that company doesn't work, you have to get into somewhere else to work on it, okay? So stay with me.
They're gonna stay with you.
What?
You're saying.
No, we're finished because we are finished with the class, but you can, if you can stay another minute or two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay?
I thought that
Yeah.
What last week presenting on Wednesday?
I don't read it.
I'll get you to get it back. Okay.
Technically, we still have 3 minutes.
All right. Do you need me?
So Dan, I think we're fine, right? You have a card?
Yeah.
Great, you know that?
Right now, I have like, what I'm gonna do is a random screen capture.
Yeah. So what are you up to now?
And every one of people.
How's that day, the new teaching, right? Have you done? So you're teaching what?
I was teaching clinical informatics.
Okay, online?
Physicians teaching, it's gonna be a hybrid program. We were supposed to start September, it's already budgeted for.